Welcome to Reddit Stories Podcast. I'm Mr. Redder. In today's story, a wild Karen loses it over Star Wars. She says she's a true fan and is really upset about what Disney's done with it. Warning, this one's absolutely crazy, so make sure you stick around till the end. Let's check this out. My aunt had a full-on meltdown over Star Wars, even though she's never watched the new movies. A few weeks ago, my family hosted a big backyard barbecue, and for the first half of the day, it was exactly what you'd expect. Burgers and hot dogs sizzling on the grill, kids running around playing, the adults sitting in their little clusters talking about work, vacations, and all the usual small talk. I was having a great time catching up with my cousins, enjoying the food, and soaking up the perfect summer weather. Then the conversation took a turn. At some point, my cousin Jason brought up the new Star Wars movies, and suddenly we were all deep in a discussion about them. Some of us liked them, some of us had mixed feelings, but overall, it was a pretty casual conversation. That is, until my aunt, who I'll be calling Karen for obvious reasons, decided to jump in. Now, Karen is the kind of person who always has to be the loudest voice in any discussion. Even if she doesn't know what she's talking about, she'll speak with absolute authority, as if her opinion is the only correct one. And when it comes to movies, she has a habit of declaring what is and isn't good without ever actually watching them. As soon as she heard the words "New Star Wars," she rolled her eyes so hard I thought she might sprain something. "Oh, please," she scoffed, waving a hand dismissively. "Everyone knows the new Star Wars movies are garbage. Disney ruined everything. They completely destroyed the franchise." I sighed, already knowing where this was going. My cousin Jason, ever the peacemaker, asked, "Oh, you saw them?" Karen snorted. "Of course not. Why would I waste my time? I already know they're bad." I exchanged a look with my brother, and I could tell he was thinking the same thing I was. Here we go. "Wait, so you're trashing them, but you haven't even seen them?" I asked. Karen folded her arms. "I don't have to watch them to know they're terrible. I've seen enough clips. I've read enough reviews. The real fans all agree. It's an embarrassment." Jason, still trying to be reasonable, said, "I mean, some people love them, some don't. But if you haven't watched them yourself, how do you even know that you wouldn't at least like some of it?" That's when Karen went from mildly annoying to full-on ridiculous. "Oh, I know. I know because Star Wars was never meant to be this nonsense that it has become. They turned it into a joke. Rey is the most boring character to ever exist, and the whole sequel trilogy is just mindless reboot garbage. And don't even get me started on The Mandalorian. Baby Yoda? What a stupid marketing gimmick." How are you gonna do Baby Yoda like that? At this point, the entire conversation had stopped. A few of my younger cousins were staring at her, wide-eyed. My uncle had this look on his face like he was debating whether to intervene or just let her go off. "Okay, first of all," I said, trying to keep my voice even, "you can dislike the sequels, that's fine. But you're acting like Star Wars was something completely different before Disney got involved." Karen let out this exaggerated, dramatic sigh. "That's exactly what it was. The originals were actual movies, not this corporate cash-grabbing nonsense that's trying to appeal to a bunch of fake fans." At this point, I was actually laughing. "Karen, do you not realize that George Lucas literally made Star Wars to sell toys? Like, that was always part of the plan. He was marketing to kids from the very beginning." That was apparently the final straw, because Karen absolutely lost it. "I cannot believe you're defending this garbage," she shrieked. "It's just proof that people like you will eat up anything with a Star Wars label on it. You don't even care that they ruined Luke Skywalker. You probably loved The Last Jedi, didn't you?" For the record, I have mixed feelings about The Last Jedi. There are parts I liked and parts I didn't, but there was no point in telling Karen that because, by now, she was beyond reasoning with. My uncle finally stepped in and told her to calm down, which only made her angrier. She started ranting about how she was the only one who actually cared about real Star Wars, and how the rest of us were just brainwashed by Disney. Then she stormed off inside, slamming the screen door so hard that my aunt had to go check to make sure she didn't break it. The barbecue eventually went back to normal, but you could tell the mood had shifted. Some of my relatives started whispering about how ridiculous the whole thing was, and even my uncle, who usually tries to stay out of drama, shook his head and muttered something about how she needed to find better things to be mad about. I thought that was the end of it, but then later that night, I saw her Facebook post. It was a long, ranting wall of text that started with, "So, I had the unfortunate experience of being surrounded by so-called Star Wars fans today, and let me tell you, it was eye-opening. These people will defend anything just because it has the Star Wars logo on it. It's pathetic. Real Star Wars fans know that everything Disney has touched is trash. The sequels? Trash. The TV shows? Trash. And if you actually like them, you are part of the problem." It went on, full of capital letters and unnecessary quotation marks, as if she had just single-handedly uncovered a massive conspiracy. And of course, her post had plenty of comments from her like-minded friends, all agreeing that Disney Star Wars was the worst thing to ever happen to cinema. At this point, I just rolled my eyes and closed the app. There was no point in arguing with her online, just like there had been no point in arguing with her at the barbecue. Karen had already made up her mind, and no amount of logic or reason was going to change it. Still, I couldn't help but laugh at the fact that she was acting like the fate of Star Wars was a personal attack on her. It's just a movie series. You can like it or not like it, but throwing a tantrum over something you haven't even watched? That's next level ridiculous. And honestly, I think that's why it bothers her so much. Deep down, I don't think she actually cares about Star Wars. I think she just loves being mad about something, and this was the latest excuse to go on a rant. So yeah, that's how a simple family barbecue turned into a full-scale meltdown over movies that my aunt has never even seen. I'm just glad I wasn't the one hosting. "She thought those were bad? I take it she's never seen Episode 1. "Oh, come on, Karen. Some people really like Star Wars Episode 1. "The only thing good about that movie was Darth Maul. He is my spirit animal." Yeah, you know you're in trouble when Darth Maul asks to speak to your manager. "That's right. Just ask Qui-Gon." Am I the jerk for leaving my girlfriend at a restaurant and ruining her job? I'm 27, male. I've been in a relationship with my girlfriend, Cindy, who's 26, since university. We've been together for years, and for the most part, things have been solid between us. Last September, Cindy's company shut down. She took it really hard. She loved her workplace, got along well with her colleagues, and had a lot of respect for her boss. Unfortunately, the company just wasn't making enough money, and they had no choice but to pull the plug. She was devastated. Losing the job itself was bad enough, but I think what really crushed her was losing the sense of purpose and routine that it gave her. When she came home and finally broke the news to me, I could tell she was upset, but I wanted to help. Since we have the same major and work in the same field, I immediately thought of my company. We're always hiring, so I offered to introduce her to my boss. She said yes, and I wasted no time texting him. I sent over her CV, and after a brief interview process, she landed a 3-month probationary period. I was honestly excited about the idea of working together. We could save money by carpooling, spend more time together, and even have lunch together. It seemed like a win-win for both of us. Unfortunately, things didn't go the way I had hoped. To put it bluntly, Cindy was a terrible employee. From day one, she struggled with basic responsibilities. She was late nearly every morning, showing up 15 to 20 minutes past her start time almost every day. At first, I tried to make it work by carpooling with her, but I have a mandatory morning meeting and need to be at work 15 minutes early. Waiting for her was making me late, so I had to stop. Once she got to the office, she barely did anything. Her favorite work activity seemed to be opening a blank Google Doc and scrolling on her phone under the desk. While most of us were busy, Cindy took every possible opportunity to slack off. Our hour-long lunch break? For her, it somehow became an hour and a half. She accomplished almost nothing during the 3 months she was there. I tried to gently push her to take things more seriously, but she just brushed me off. She didn't seem to care that her probationary period was coming to an end, and I was starting to feel embarrassed about recommending her in the first place. Then last Monday, something unusual happened. For once, Cindy was actually ready on time. Maybe it was my constant nudging, or maybe she finally realized that her probationary period was running out. But whatever the reason, we were able to carpool again. That day, we went out to lunch together. Cindy ate ridiculously slow, and I kept glancing at the clock, reminding her that we had to wrap up. But just as we were about to leave, she decided she absolutely had to get a refill on her soda. The restaurant was packed and the server was busy, so she just sat there waiting. I told her that time was up and we had to go, but she refused to move. At that point, I was done. I put down cash for the meal and the tip. I told her I was leaving, and I walked out to my car. She must have thought I was bluffing because she didn't move. She probably expected me to give in and wait for her, but I didn't. I got in my car and I drove back to the office alone. She showed up about 20 minutes later, visibly frustrated. The restaurant was only a 10-minute walk from our office, so I'm pretty sure she still got her refill before leaving. She was furious with me for leaving her behind, but I felt no guilt. Then Friday rolled around, decision day for her probationary period. As expected, my company chose not to hire her full-time. The reason? Poor punctuality and a general lack of direction. Instead of taking responsibility, Cindy immediately blamed me. She said I made her late, that I ruined everything, that I should have supported her more. Then last night, she confronted me with, "Well, how am I supposed to pay my part of the rent without a job?" I looked at her and said, "Yeah, that's a good question. How will you be paying?" That set her off completely. She exploded, and now she's gone silent. She doesn't even want to argue about it anymore. So, am I the jerk? Good grief. They didn't let her go because she was late from lunch one time. Good for you for not risking your job to play her stupid games. Not the jerk. Am I the jerk for telling my friend she couldn't bring her kid to my child-free birthday dinner? I'm 29, female. I recently hosted a birthday dinner at a nice restaurant with a group of close friends. It was meant to be a small, intimate gathering, just a quiet, child-free evening with good food, good conversation, and a chance to relax without distractions. I made it clear in the invite that this was a child-free event, so everyone could plan accordingly. I didn't think it was an unreasonable request. One of my friends, Laura, who's 31, has a 3-year-old daughter. When I first sent out the invite, she asked if she could bring her child since she didn't have a babysitter. I understood her situation, but I politely told her that I really wanted to keep this dinner child-free. I even reassured her that if she couldn't make it, I completely understood. It wasn't personal, I just wanted a different kind of atmosphere for the evening. She didn't argue about it at the time. She just said, "I'll see what I can do," and that was that. Or so I thought. Fast forward to the night of the dinner. Everyone was arriving at the restaurant, greeting each other, settling in, and getting excited for the meal. I was in a great mood until I saw Laura walk in, holding her daughter's hand. My stomach immediately dropped. I tried to keep my expression neutral, but I was caught completely off guard. I had made it very clear that this was a child-free event. I didn't want to make a scene, so I took a deep breath, walked over to her, and pulled her aside for a quiet conversation. "Hey," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "I thought we talked about this. I really wanted to keep this dinner child-free." She just shrugged and said, "Yeah, but I couldn't find a sitter, and I didn't want to miss your birthday." I stared at her for a second, trying to process what she had just said. She had time to plan for this. I had given her plenty of notice, and instead of letting me know ahead of time that she couldn't come, she decided to show up anyway, expecting me to be fine with it. I took another deep breath, still trying to be polite. I totally get that, but I don't think it's fair to the other guests who also made arrangements for childcare, expecting this to be a child-free event. Her expression hardened. "She's well behaved," she said, like that was supposed to make it okay. "It's not about that," I told her. "It's about respecting the boundary I set. I would have been happy to celebrate with you another time if this didn't work for you." Laura's patience snapped. She rolled her eyes and said I was being ungrateful and ridiculous for making such a big deal out of it. She even implied that I was making her feel like a bad mom just because she brought her daughter along. At this point, I was getting frustrated. I had tried to be understanding. I had tried to be polite. But she was the one who put me in this situation, and now she was acting like I was the problem. I told her that if she couldn't respect my wishes for my own birthday dinner, then she had to leave. She did not take it well. She huffed, grabbed her daughter's hand, and stormed out of the restaurant without saying another word. After she left, the mood was definitely a little tense for a bit, but eventually things relaxed again. The rest of the night went great. Everyone else had followed the request, and we had the kind of evening that I originally planned. Good food, uninterrupted conversation, and a stress-free time. Later that night, though, I got a long text from Laura. She accused me of humiliating her in front of our friends, making her feel like a bad mom and being completely unreasonable. She said I should have just let her stay, especially since she had no other choice. A couple of our mutual friends think I overreacted and should have let it slide. Others completely agree that it was unfair of her to ignore my boundary and put me in that position. Now I feel torn. I didn't want to make a scene, and I didn't want to hurt her feelings, but I also feel like I shouldn't have to justify a boundary. I was crystal clear about it from the start. Am I the jerk for making her leave when she showed up with her kid? Not the jerk. A boundary is only as strong as your willingness to enforce it, and you did exactly that. Am I the jerk for admitting to my son that I love his mother more than him and telling him he's acting self-centered? My son moved out right after graduating college last year. Since then, he's been completely wrapped up in his own life. My wife and I couldn't be prouder of him. He worked hard, earned his degree, and is now out in the world making his own way. That was always the goal, and we're happy to see him succeed. That being said, we do wish he made more of an effort to stay in touch with us. It's not like he moved across the country. He's only 30 minutes away, yet months go by without so much as a text. If we don't reach out first, we don't hear from him at all. My wife tries to brush it off, saying he's young and busy, but I know it bothers her. It bothers me too, but we never wanted to be the kind of parents who guilt-trip their kids for not calling every day, so we let it slide. Until my wife's birthday. Her birthday was 2 days ago. She didn't expect anything big, just a call, maybe a quick visit, something to show that he remembered. The day passed and nothing. No text, no call, no sign that our son had even realized what day it was. I could tell she was hurt, but she didn't want to make a big deal out of it. She just smiled and said, "He's probably just caught up with work. It happens." I didn't like that. Not because I wanted to force him to do anything, but because I know how much she downplays things when she's disappointed. So the next day, I gave him a call. I wasn't angry, I just wanted to give him a reminder. "Hey buddy, you missed your mom's birthday." There was a pause before he sighed. "Oh man, I'm sorry. Can you tell her happy birthday for me?" I wasn't expecting much more than that, but still, it stung a little. "Yeah, I'll tell her. You know, it would be nice if you could come by soon. We miss you." That was probably the wrong thing to say because his entire tone changed. "Dad, I have my own life now. You guys have yours. I don't know why you're making a big deal out of this." I blinked, caught off guard by how defensive he got over something so small. "I'm not making a big deal out of anything. We just don't see you much, and your mom was hoping to hear from you on her birthday." His voice got sharper. "I get that, but I don't want to be glued to my parents for the rest of my life. I'm trying to do my own thing, and you guys are always pulling me back." That threw me off completely. Always pulling him back? We barely ever hear from him. It's not like we're showing up unannounced or calling him every day. So I asked, "What are you talking about? We barely reach out as it is." Then, out of nowhere, he brought up something that happened when he was 10 years old. "You want to know why I don't feel close to you? It's because I already know where I stand in this family. I heard you and Mom talking when I was a kid. You said you love her more than you love me." I was stunned. "What? When did I ever say that?" He explained that when he was 10, he overheard my wife and I talking about our parents' marriages. At some point, I had apparently said something like, "Even though I love him a lot, I love his mother the most." My wife had agreed with me, and according to him, that moment changed everything. I sat there in silence, trying to remember if that conversation had ever happened. I had no recollection of saying anything like that, but even if I did, I didn't mean it in the way he took it. I tried to explain that loving my wife doesn't mean I love him any less, but he wasn't having it. "I was just a kid," he said bitterly, "and that's when I realized I was always going to come second." At that point, my patience snapped. "That's ridiculous. You're acting like a self-centered brat who thinks the world revolves around them." His response? "Go to heck." And then he hung up. I sat there for a long time staring at my phone, trying to process what had just happened. When I told my wife about it, she was shocked, but also upset with me. She said I was wrong for calling him that, even though I still believe it was true. Now I'm sitting here wondering if I handled it the wrong way. Am I the jerk for how I responded? I mean, can we blame him? He's probably internalized that for years, and then you call him spoiled because he thinks you don't love him as much, when really, you should have said those are two different forms of love. You're the jerk. My stepdaughter keeps getting sick and skipping school. Am I the jerk for finally putting my foot down? I'm 42 female. My stepdaughter, who's 13, has her dad, who's 42, wrapped around her little finger, mostly in a good way. He's a fantastic dad, super involved, attentive, and completely devoted to her. He spends as much time with her as possible and genuinely adores her. Their bond is strong, and for the most part, I think it's wonderful. Stepdaughter is bright, funny, and fiercely independent. She's really starting to develop her own personality, which is great to see. But she's been through a lot, especially in the years she lived with her mom. From what I understand, she didn't receive much in the way of structure, discipline, or even the basic kind of parenting that teaches kids healthy boundaries and consequences. Because of that, she struggles with honesty. A lot. She's incredibly manipulative when she thinks she can get away with it, especially with adults who don't see through it right away. I try to have patience because, for most of her life, the adults around her didn't give her much reason to be honest. I get why she developed these habits. That said, she will lie, cheat, and manipulate to get out of anything she doesn't want to do. Lately, her go-to trick has been getting out of school by claiming she's sick. The problem is, she actually does have legitimate stomach issues. She doesn't tolerate dairy or gluten well. A few weeks ago, we completely cut both from her diet, and like magic, all of her stomach problems disappeared. No more random nausea, no more cramping, no more running to the bathroom. She felt great. But here's the thing. She wants to eat whatever she wants, and her dad doesn't want to force dietary restrictions on her. I get that too. No one wants to be the food police, and we both want her to feel like she has control over her own choices. So I sat down with her and said, okay, you have two choices. One, we cut out dairy and gluten entirely, and I'll do it with you so you don't feel alone. Or two, you keep eating what you want, but you don't get to come home sick anymore unless you're actually throwing up or have a fever. We also agreed on one more rule. If she did come home sick, she wouldn't get her phone until school was out for the day. My husband thought this was a fair compromise, and I genuinely believed we had all agreed to it. Problem solved, right? Apparently not. Today, I found out she came home from school again, claiming she had stomach issues. Not only was she on her phone all day, but as soon as school let out, she went over to a friend's house like nothing had happened. At that point, I lost my patience. Not in a screaming over-the-top way, but I let my husband know that in no uncertain terms, this was not okay. I told him, you're either letting her make herself sick or she's manipulating you into staying home whenever she feels like it. Neither of those are good parenting choices. I don't care how much she's been through. This is not setting her up for success. So today, I put my foot down. I told him that we either get the dairy and gluten out of the house for good or we enforce the rule that we agreed on. If she chooses to eat dairy and gluten, she has to stay at school, period. And if she does come home early, she doesn't get her phone back, and she definitely doesn't get to go to a friend's house afterward. I feel like a jerk for being so firm, but at the same time, this is driving me absolutely crazy. I know she's had a rough past, but I don't see how allowing this behavior is helping her in any way. Am I the jerk for putting my foot down? Not the jerk, but your husband is. She's 13. She's not going to voluntarily choose a restrictive diet. She needs help to stay healthy, and your husband is not providing that. I hired a babysitter so I can go golfing twice a month. My wife isn't happy about it. My wife, who's 39, and I, 41 male, have been married for 12 years, and we have 3 kids, who are 10, 7, and 4. I got in on the ground floor of a startup about 20 years ago, and the business has since grown exponentially. I'm now in an executive level position. My wife works in retail. About 18 months ago, my wife was offered a promotion that would include a relatively small bump in pay, but would require her to start working weekends, something she was able to avoid previously. They also dangled a carrot in front of her in the form of this promotion, leading to a bigger and better promotion. She was very excited about the opportunity when she told me about it, but I expressed some concern about her having to work weekends. She would have to work 5 to 6 weekend shifts every month, so pretty much 3/4 of the weekends every month. I told her that's asking a lot of her when the bump in pay isn't that much, especially when we don't particularly need the extra money. But she was so excited to advance her career that she disregarded my concerns and accepted the position. Since she started the new position, I've told her many times how I'm feeling stressed and burnt out by not really having breaks during the week. I work a stressful job 5 days a week, and then I have to go into solo parent mode almost every weekend. On the weeks my wife works weekends, she gets 2 days off during the week pretty much all to herself, especially during the school year. Yes, she uses this time to run errands and do things around the house, but she also uses it to meet up with friends and do things for herself. I don't have free time to do similar things for myself. My weekends are filled with activities for the kids. The one weekend a month my wife doesn't work is allocated as family time at the request of her. Whenever I brought this up to her, she would tell me that her position is temporary until she gets another promotion, but that hasn't happened yet. This summer, I started hiring a teenage babysitter in our neighborhood to watch our kids for a few hours twice a month on Saturday so that I can go golfing with my friends. It's done wonders for my stress level, and the social interaction greatly improves my mood. The kids look forward to it as well because they like the babysitter. When I first told my wife about this, she was upset because not only am I spending money on a babysitter just for myself, I'm also spending money on golf, which pretty much cancels out the money she makes that day or even more. When I told her how much better I feel having time for myself, she tells me that I should do that in a way that isn't so expensive. The last time she brought this up, I reminded her that even after her promotion, I still make over 2 times what she does, and that her bosses probably lied to her about another promotion because no one else would take the position that she did. She got mad at me for insulting her career and for spending hundreds of dollars every month just on myself. Not the jerk. You need a break. Mental health is important. If it doesn't hurt your family's financial situation, it's money well spent. Not the jerk. She forced solo parenting on you. You're simply making the best out of a bad situation that she unilaterally created. If it were me, I'd increase the number of hours and days to make it a real break, not just a few hours. But I'm a jerk. Not the jerk. And your wife was a fool for taking that promotion without a timeline and written contract stating when the other promotion was to happen and what it entails. What she got isn't so much a promotion as it's just a means of getting someone to work the weekends, and the raise is probably little more than the differential many retail places pay for working undesirable shifts. It doesn't sound like the money you're spending on golf is a hardship. Denying you that outlet would just lead to other issues. Yeah, you could spend a couple evenings a month out with the guys, but that's not something you'd want to do after working all day, and if you take a weekend evening for it, she'd complain that it's cutting into the time you have to spend together. I think your wife jumped at the word promotion without actually thinking it through. Either she gives up a day of her family time to cut the cost by 1 day of babysitting fees, or she accepts that the cost of a couple days of golf a month is worth it for the physical and mental health benefits to you. Am I the jerk for leaving itemized tips to compensate for my wife's behavior? My wife and I, in our 30s, dine out every once in a while, but not too often because of my wife's annoying habit inherited from her family. She always complains, sends food back if it's not absolutely perfect, and makes needless requests and substitutions. She doesn't have allergies or sensitivities. It can easily take 5 minutes for her just to order her own food, and sometimes I've already finished my meal by the time she gets her food because she sends it back, asks for modifications, etc. I know restaurant staff don't appreciate it. I've tried talking to her about this, but she doesn't see an issue with it. Anyway, we make decent money and we use our combined funds on dates and dinners. I recently started writing what my wife does on the receipt and then calculating a tip, in addition to the normal gratuity, to compensate. So, to a receipt I might add, complained about not having this beverage, plus $5. Asked 5 questions about a single menu item, plus $5. Asked for new drink because too much ice, another $5. Sent meal back, was exactly what she had ordered, another $5. She didn't notice me doing it the first 2 or 3 times, but last night she noticed I was spending a lot of time on writing a tip amount and asked why. I showed her what I wrote. She's been mad at me since, saying I'm embarrassing her to the staff. I told her she's embarrassing both of us. Am I the jerk? Petty, maybe, but am I a jerk? Edit. My wife is otherwise a very nice, caring, and generous person. She does always say please and thank you, even for the most absurd requests. Annoying each other like this is our love language, but this time she's pretty mad. Oops. Update. Alright, we've had our laughs and shared our perspectives. Since my wife frequents this subreddit, I went ahead and showed her this post. With that said, I'd like to address a few things. First, she and I both know that any posts on this sub are peepholes into people's lives and characters, not display cases. Yes, my wife's behavior when dining out is bad, which is why I tried to think of a way to point it out and make up for it. That said, she's not a bad person. Learn to separate the two and you'll get far in life. Secondly, when I said she was mad at me, I don't mean that she's deeply hurt and distraught. She's calling me a jerk, yes, but that's normal for us. If this was something that was actually hurtful, I wouldn't be sharing it online. Anyway, she would like for all of you to know that she's taken your responses to heart and she's going to be more mindful of how she dines. She would like to add that she didn't think it was a big deal before because, as she puts it, she doesn't think twice about meeting expectations in her line of work, even if they are above and beyond the norm. She's just happy to meet demand, but she recognizes that not everyone else feels that way. She's going to try to be a better customer. She said reading this was brutally eye-opening, but we both also found some laughter and had a good discussion. Not the jerk. This is great. Maybe seeing it written down will give her some perspective. These types of patrons are the worst, and it's such a second-degree embarrassment when they're at your table. Not the jerk. I think it's hilarious. I bet the servers also enjoy the little fun and the extra money. Not the jerk. I'm a former server who worked at multiple restaurants. I would have hated to be serving your wife, no matter how polite she is. I have other tables, and she sounds like a time drain who's impossible to please. Your embarrassment isn't an overreaction. The servers are definitely judging and gossiping about her. I appreciate your itemized receipts. They would have made me laugh and been shown to work buddies. Too much ice? Really? Get out. You're the jerk. Your money does not make up for your wife's behavior. Everyone deserves to be treated with respect and dignity. Your wife treats them horribly, and you throw money at them. All you're really doing is enabling her to continue this behavior. If you really cared, you would stop going to sit-down restaurants. Order takeout and eat at home or the park so she has nobody to harass. I snooped through my girlfriend's laptop and I saw her mean girl comments about me. My girlfriend, female 23, and I, male 25, have been dating for a little under a year now. We met 3 years ago when she was in college and I was spending the summer at a relative's in the same city as her. We met on a dating app, went on a date, and we started hooking up. I thought she was a sweet girl and very cute, but nothing else ever happened because a week after she started classes again, she told me she was seriously talking to someone. I left for grad school and so we didn't speak again. We had each other on Instagram though, until about a year ago when she ended up going to grad school at the same institution. I saw her on Instagram that she was there, slid into her DMs, and we started dating again. I thought she showed pretty much every green flag I could imagine. She has lots of friends she's really close to her family, volunteers, has lots of hobbies, and she's academically and professionally successful. She's so incredibly sweet and considerate. For example, my birthday was just a month after we started dating, and yet she still got me a perfect gift. She's pretty much loved everywhere she goes. Her colleagues love her, my friends love her, my family loves her. I also want to emphasize how not mean-spirited she is. I've definitely dated girls before who were mean towards people around them, but my girlfriend is nothing at all like that. The only times I've heard her talk badly about people, it's like she's in a stand-up comedy special. It's all humor and nothing mean. And she never gets into arguments with her friends or family and is pretty much on good terms with everyone she's ever met. Anyways, today she was working on her computer and she left for the gym. For some reason, she left it on. I think she had some research thing running. It was on the kitchen counter, so I had to move it, and I saw a Google Drive folder shared with a bunch of people. I know I should absolutely not have looked, but my curiosity got the better of me. Basically, it was a folder shared with her friend group from college, which is about 10 girls and they're super close. There were a lot of subfolders. The first one I looked at had homework keys and back exams for their classes. Then I looked at a specific document. It was massive, like 100 pages, and there were subheadings for different topics. It seemed like a collection of out-of-pocket things any of them had said. Each one was cited with the name of the person who had said it. As I was scrolling through, I saw my name under a subheading, Men, with a chicken emoji. It just said gross and mean stuff about me that I don't want to repeat. They were all signed with my girlfriend's name. I felt bad about snooping until then, but after that, I really wanted to see if there was anything else about me. I looked through the rest of the file, and there were insults about basically everyone she'd ever met, including about every man my girlfriend had ever been with. Honestly, mine were way less mean than theirs. I guess that's a positive. There was also a folder with presentations it seemed like my girlfriend had made and presented before each semester in college. They were all titled with something like roster and the date, and they had a slide for every man she was talking to, as well as a recap for whoever she had been with over break. Of course, I was there with my full name and pics of me, and a picture of my car too. The only description of me was 6 out of 10, bought me cigs. There were some very mean things about other guys they knew, like ranking them on a loser scale. The only other thing I saw about me was in a folder titled Life-Changing Moments that had a list for each of them. There were a lot of insane things about my girlfriend in there that I had never heard of. Think diseases and how she'd gotten them. There was also one about me which basically said, hooked up with him and realized I needed to get out of this era if I don't want to end up being a sad loser too. This is the one that really got me, as it seemed so much meaner than everything else, and I have no idea what she meant by it. It was getting close to the time she would be back though, so I just closed everything and locked her laptop. She got back, I didn't mention anything, and we just had dinner as normal. I'm here now because I have absolutely no idea what to do. Everything I saw was awful, and yet she's the last person I would ever expect something like this from. I'm in disbelief, and I really don't know where to go from here. I'm hoping there's some explanation that doesn't make her the world's worst person, and yet I really don't want to confront her either. We have a great thing going, and I don't see any way that confronting her isn't going to lead to drama. I don't want to talk to anyone I know about this, in case we stay together and she then has to face them. So I thought I would ask here and see if anyone had any reason to apply to this completely absurd situation. Update. The responses were very mixed, but they gave me a lot to think about. I did some reflection and I realized her tone didn't really seem to be much meaner than the jokes she usually makes about people. The ones about me in particular I realized were actually hilarious, like I kept cracking up about the LinkedIn one. And they were honestly entirely accurate too. What I was honestly really bothered about was that I was included and I pretty much wanted to know if she actually liked me or was just settling. I knew about her many boyfriends before, so I wasn't that upset about it either, and I felt like it wasn't my place to say anything about them. I decided that I needed to confront her because the situation was upsetting me a lot. I decided that I was going to A. Ask her about the 6 out of 10 rating because it honestly hurt my pride a lot. B. Ask her about the sad loser comment because that was the one that seemed the meanest. And C. Ask her in general if she actually wants to be with me. It would have also been a deal breaker if she kept updating the document with stuff about me after we'd started dating, or if she'd had any really unacceptable stuff on people. That said, I did realize that I wanted to mess with her a bit. I've never met anyone who takes it better than her. Like anytime I've seen people making jokes about her, she takes it very well and enjoys it, so I didn't think it would upset her too much. The day after I made the post, we didn't see each other until dinner. I had been a bit weird all day over text, but she didn't think much of it and just asked me if I was okay. I had devised my plan at this point, so over dinner, I dropped that I was considering buying a LinkedIn Plus subscription for networking. She gave me a side eye like I have never seen before and asked me why on earth I would do that. I saw her later texting her group chat. I didn't see what, but I was pretty sure it was about that. The next day, she seemed suspicious, so I decided to really finish it off. She went to work and I had the day off, so I decided to really go to town on my Instagram story. I actually just post a lot of aesthetic pictures that I do spend a lot of time taking. I think that comment in her doc was probably because on our first date, I took some pics for my Instagram story and she said something like, "Oh, I like those." And I said, they're not really good enough. And she laughed at me even at the time. So anyways, that day I roamed around the city to all my favorite aesthetic spots and posted probably 10 or so stories, which I imagine annoyed everyone a lot. She slid up on them, and by the 10th one she said, "Dang, you're really going to town on these today." So I replied something like, "Yeah, it gets me in the mood, you know?" To which she replied with a confused emoji. At this point I think she had caught on, and I had honestly been acting a bit off too, because my pride was still a little bruised, and I was also regretting having snooped. That night she came to my place with my favorite dinner and suddenly, for her, asked me if there was anything I wanted to talk about. At this point I laid it out for her, and I prefaced it with apologizing for snooping, but that the title of the document had caught my eye. She looked absolutely mortified, but was also laughing and kept apologizing. I laid out my 3 concerns to her, and she told me that A, the 6 out of 10 was truthful at the time, but she did like me a lot, as evidenced by dating me. B, the sad loser comment was about all the people she knew who only hooked up with others and never had real relationships, and that hooking up with me made her realize that she would much prefer to be in a relationship with someone like me. And that C, yes, obviously she loved and liked and respected me a lot. She also invited me to look through the folder freely, and that she wasn't ashamed of anything in there, just embarrassed that I had seen those comments about myself. I checked, and there was nothing in there about me since we'd started dating. The only stuff was from when we'd hooked up. She also pointed out a document that I hadn't looked at before. It was in a folder titled Rankings, and each girl had a document in there. She only let me look at hers, but it was basically a ranking of every person she'd ever been involved with in any way. It was a long document, with comments. I was first, and where for everyone else there was a list of pros and cons, mine just said, "Love him." Also, it seemed like they would all comment on each other's to argue about the ranking, but mine just had comments from all the girls pretty much affirming the choice and praising me. So I was pretty satisfied with what I saw, and it also seems like they only update it now with stories gossip, or pictures, and no insults or anything else like that. My girlfriend was overall mortified and extremely apologetic, and I was also apologetic about looking through it, and told her she could look through anything I owned if she wanted to, but she turned me down. She wasn't upset about the snooping at all and said that she had nothing to hide and that she would have done the same thing if she had seen a folder as artfully and intriguingly named as theirs. So yeah, we are all good. This is kinda weird. It's still giving major red flags, like who does all this, especially into adulthood beyond college. Everyone in this post is incredibly annoying. And really strange. People certainly chat with their friends about all aspects of life, but keeping records and documentation of asinine incidents, events, and ratings of other people is really weird. I mean, I'm glad things worked out for OP and his girlfriend, but the situation is just weird. I know jokes are jokes, but the fact the girlfriend has a folder with rankings and seems to be alright with the way people make these types of comments that are pretty rude is really not good. Am I the jerk for asking my husband if he has money for ice cream? This past year has been really hard on my husband. He hates his job, is having a difficult time trying to see his son, and a lot of debt has stacked up from reckless spending trying to make him feel better. We recently started to combine finances as well as having separate ones. This was done so I could manage our money and pull us out of debt again. This has been working great until the other night. My husband and I were at my mom's for dinner, and as we started to pack up to leave, he asked if we could get Dairy Queen. I asked him if he had money for Dairy Queen. I will add the only reason I asked is because each time we get paid, we both take out spending money. On this pay cycle, he took $200 and I took $40. Well, he didn't have money for ice cream, and I didn't want to spend the household money because it was going to dip into bills. My mom gave us $10 and we went on our way. In the car, he decided he didn't want ice cream, and we ended up getting popsicles at the store later. I thought all was good until last night. He stated that I not only embarrassed him in front of my mom, but that I was being financially mistreating, and he would no longer let me handle the money, and I would have to give him an itemized list of bills if I wanted money to pay them. I apologized for embarrassing him and said my intention was not to mistreat him, but to help him think about his spending habits. I pointed out that he took $200 for spending money and I took $40. I still have $32 and he already went through $200. He said most of that went to paying people back for money he had borrowed, so it doesn't count. We still haven't come to a new plan on how to handle money, and I'm thinking about staying at my mom's tonight so he has time to think. I hope he's just overwhelmed with life and not realizing he's upset in general. So, am I the jerk for asking my husband if he had money for ice cream? Updates. First, I want to say thank you to everyone commenting on this. It's really helping me figure out how to deal with the situation better. A few things I would like to add. Both my husband and I work full-time, but my husband hasn't made it to a full week of work in months. He typically misses half to 3 days every week, so we're pretty even on the money we're bringing into the household right now. I would also like to add that I'm autistic, and so is my mother, so I often miss social cues, and I've realized, and I did apologize to him, and that if it was wrong of me to say that in front of my mom, I just didn't know that I had messed up. The last thing I would like to add, and I don't mean to sound petty by this, we've already spent $100 on ice cream for this month. He has an addictive personality, and we've been working on that, so I know a couple of bucks doesn't seem like a lot, but when a quarter of a grocery budget, if not more, goes to ice cream, I was expecting him to use his own personal spending money that was given to him at payday when we divided it. Update 2. We both went to work this morning. We spent most of the day texting each other YouTube links about conflict resolution to prepare to talk. When we got home, we started with talking about things we enjoy with each other. Then we started talking about how we both handle issues. The solution we came up with is going back to completely separating finances. When it comes to bills we share, we will decide who will be responsible to making sure that the bill is paid in a timely manner. We're also going to factor in how much we make versus domestic duties and make sure we are fair with it on both sides. If one covers more bills, the other will do more house duties. We haven't done the math on it yet, but have started a chore plan. I have family coming over for the next few days, so we're going to wait till they're gone and take a day to make a full plan and also talk about life and stuff to be on the same page again. Part of our talk will be potentially getting a financial consultant so a third party can help. Getting him a new job as soon as possible will be on the agenda. He applied for 2 today. I also want to pick up more hours at work so I can build up a backup fund. As I stated earlier, I work 2 jobs. One is a 9-to-5 type job, and the other is a small business I manage on my own that's just hitting consistent profit. The 9-to-5 is what I'm going to start investing more time into for the short term, so I have backup savings he can't touch. He did admit he was harsh with his comments. He was financially mistreated in the past, and he panicked and tried to set a boundary in his mind, but realized it was emotional. We will handle shared issues together, and the rest is on our own. I gave him all the info on his student loan and medical bills and told him he will need to be responsible for making sure those get paid. This is going to be what we do for now, and I did bring up in the future, if we have kids, we will redo this. I told him that I will not be a stay-at-home mom and homeschool our kids like we planned without major changes being made to this. I will not go into a situation I have no safety net. He said he understood and we would deal with it when it came up. He also said that if I do become a stay-at-home mom one day, that he wants to do a post-nup to make sure that I'll be okay and make the best choices for our kids' future in case things ever go south. He was a teen parent and bad choices were made on both sides. He has a great relationship with his son long distance, but the ability to go see him is wrapped up in relationship drama on the baby mama side. Her current partner will not let him speak with any of the dads of the 3 kids. So it's very important for him to make fair agreements if the worst happens so we can do what's right for our potential kids. Huge thanks to everyone that commented and for the advice. Not the jerk, but I'm echoing concerns about your husband's understanding of his financial habits. He's going to drag you down like an anchor in the sea if he can't get a grip, OP. Not the jerk, but fundamentally, if your husband doesn't see a problem with his spending habits, there's a bigger concern here. There's no point in trying to show him how to handle his money if he doesn't think there's an issue with the way he's handling his finances. You're a wife, not a mother. You can't micromanage your adult partner if they're insistent on being reckless. Why is he calling in so much? He sounds lazy. If he wants more money, he needs to actually go to work and stop calling in. OP. I used to work at the same place as him. It's super toxic and it's horrible. I've been begging him to quit for months. If he wanted to work more and gain more income, he would. If he wanted to quit, he would. If he wanted to manage his money better, he would. Why are you expected to be the only adult in this relationship? The customer who tipped a fake $100 bill. I work as a server. This one guy always comes to the restaurant I work at. He usually is pretty quiet and he never tips too well. Most of the time he comes with a couple of friends or by himself and sits at the bar and watches a sport game. I've never had a problem with him until he came in one time with a date. I've never seen the woman before, so I assumed they were new to dating. Anyways, they sit at a table this time in a more quiet part of the restaurant and they were set at one of my tables. I had no problem with them and everything was going fine. They asked for the check and I went right around the corner from their table. It was close by, so I was quick. As I was coming back to the table, the guy says to the woman, "Watch this," as he puts down a $100 bill on the table. He saw me see, and he was joking like, "Oh, you weren't supposed to see that." I was ecstatic either way, even though it was so obvious he was trying to impress her. I didn't care. I waited till they left to go grab the $100 bill. Well, when I unfolded it, it was one of those fake $100 bills, I guess for pranks. That means this guy planned this out to impress the woman. It was so frustrating because I needed the money, but at the same time, I thought it was because I did a great job. Either the woman was in on it or he decided to be a jerk in 2 different ways. Told my manager and he was like, "Wow, that's ridiculous." I decided to hold on to it because I knew the day would come when I could get back at this guy. 2 weeks later, my manager recognizes the guy, and while I was working at the time, I was in a different side of the restaurant which was already full. My manager found me and asked if I wanted that customer's table and told me he was with the woman from last time. I often joked with my manager about throwing the fake $100 bill back on the table in front of that woman if he ever came back to embarrass him. I thought to myself, yeah, I may be busy already, but I also thought, sure, what's one more table? Told my manager absolutely, no problem, with a smirk on my face. Before I went over to their table, I ran out to my car to grab the fake $100 bill that was sitting in my cup holder for this exact moment. I get to their table and they instantly recognize me. The woman seemed normal, but the guy looked like he was nervous. I pretended nothing happened all the way until I got their check. When I brought the check back, I placed it down on the table as well as the fake $100 bill, but left it unfolded so the fake part was showing. I looked at the guy and said, "Hey, not sure if you remember me from last time, but I believe you forgot this. Just returning it because I believed it was too much." The woman looked very confused, so I instantly knew she was not part of it, but the guy got very nervous and said, "I don't know what that is." I said, "Oh, my mistake," and laughed and said to the woman, "Have a good night," and I walked away. When I came back, there was a big $0 on the signed copy and a $50 bill, real this time, where the woman was sitting after they had left. One can only assume that the guy didn't want to tip on his card, so he wrote obnoxiously big zeros on the tip, and that $50 just so happened to be where the woman was sitting, so I'm hoping she had placed it there. Now I don't know what happened with the couple or if they stayed together, but I haven't seen them back since and it's been a few weeks, and I really hope she looks for his red flags now. Here's your pizza with everything. When I was in college, a long time ago, I worked at a national pizza chain. Mostly I delivered, but I got some extra benefits for running 1 or 2 shifts a week as a manager. The following happened when a customer came in complaining about not having enough toppings on the company's version of a deluxe pizza. So for a bit of context, when a customer asks for a pizza with everything, most pizza places will default to their version of the deluxe. These pizzas usually have 5 to 8 toppings, ours had 7, but they are not full portion toppings and are typically the equivalent of a 3 or 4 topping pizza. This is actually because they taste better that way and customers are not charged for a 7 topping pizza or anything. So I'm managing a shift when I hear a customer absolutely going off on one of our clerks up front. I intercede and he proceeds to yell at me because he ordered a pizza a couple of weeks ago and barely got anything on it. I explained the portions and why we do them, etc., but he just got more irate. So I said, sure, I'll make you a pizza with full toppings of everything on it, but it's going to cost a fortune, taste terrible, and probably still be cold. So we entered into the system and the total comes to be like $60 or more. A lot at that time. He's obviously a little shocked, but he goes ahead and pays it. The pizza was like 3 inches tall. We couldn't even cut it with the wheel cutter and had to find a rocker cutter for it. It's ice cold in the middle because the ovens were not designed to penetrate that much stuff, and there's no way to cook the center without burning the top and the bottom. All the cheese that was on top just slides into the cut as we're cutting it. It's just a train wreck of a pizza. You could barely even get it in the box. So I take it up front and hand it to the guy, who obviously spent the entire time thinking how he could get his $60 back. So he opens it and starts feeling it and says, "This meat is uncooked. I want my money back." I explained that all of our meats were pre-cooked and safe to eat from frozen, so he couldn't have a refund for something I warned him about. He argued for about 5 more minutes and threatened all sorts of things, but I just didn't care. In the end, he headed out with his pizza that most likely went straight into the trash. Am I the jerk for telling my father I'll cut ties with him if he doesn't come to my wedding? I'm 26, female. My father, who's 59, is a slightly known musician in my home country. Due to his career, he missed out on most of my milestones while I was growing up. School plays, a few birthdays, and both my high school and college graduations, to name a few. Mostly events he was informed of months in advance and canceled on me either weeks or days before. He always apologized for doing so, but never really seemed to feel guilty. I remember we almost had a fight because I didn't want to watch a video he had missed my high school graduation to film. It hurt me so much as a kid that I stopped expecting him to show up. It still bothered me when I got older, but at that point I understood that it was his job and I should be grateful he even had one. I'm getting married in early September. My fiance, 28, male, and I have been planning this wedding for a year and a half. The date was decided and invitations were sent months ago. Almost every guest has already RSVP'd. I've reminded my father of the date several times this past year, and he kept assuring me he had blocked the entire week off of the wedding and would be there. A couple days ago, my father called to inform me he'd had to schedule a concert for my wedding day. He apologized and said he'd make it up to me with a gift. I don't want a gift. I want my father to come to my wedding. So I told him that either he figured out a way to reschedule, which I knew he could probably do if he tried, or I'd cut ties with him. What followed was one of the biggest fights we've ever had. He called me ungrateful, spoiled, and selfish for giving him that kind of ultimatum and expecting him to change his work schedule for my own benefit, which he has asked me to do on many occasions. He yelled, and I held myself not to yell back. We're still fighting over this. Most of my family is on my side, though both my mom, divorced from my dad, and my fiance have warned me not to make any moves I might regret. My sister, who's 20, is on my father's side, which doesn't surprise me. I love my father, and I really don't want to stop talking to him, but I'm done with him expecting to be able to miss out on my life with no consequences. That being said, I'd be lying if I said that I don't feel guilty. Just writing this all down made me feel like a huge brat. Am I the jerk? Edit. I thought I'd clarify some things. My mom and my fiance are 100% on my side. They told me to be careful because they know I don't really want to go no contact. Also, my mom has barely spoken to my father in almost 20 years, and my fiance is with me because we love each other, not because of who my father is. My father is not a struggling artist. He's been in this line of work since before I was born. I wouldn't consider him rich, but he lives more than just comfortably. If I thought he couldn't afford to reschedule a concert, I wouldn't blame him for not being able to come to the wedding. And yes, he paid child support and provided for both me and my sister. I do have other people who can walk me down the aisle. My stepdad, which would make my dad furious, so I might do it purely out of pettiness, and at least 2 of my best friends would be more than willing to do so. My father isn't paying for any part of the wedding. He offered to, but I declined. I don't live with him anymore, and both me and my fiance have good jobs. When I was younger, I told myself that once I didn't need his money anymore, I'd never ask for it again. My sister isn't the golden child. He missed many of her milestones as well. Update. Someone said that my father doesn't see me as a person, but as an extension of himself. That one hurt the most, because it's the best definition of my relationship with my father I've ever seen. My father wasn't neglectful in the traditional sense. My parents divorced when I was 7, and my mom had primary custody of me and my sister, but we still went to his place several times a week. My mother is a teacher and couldn't raise us on her salary alone, so he was our main financial supporter even after the divorce. Because of all of this, he seems to believe he was the best father ever. Whenever we fought, he always insisted I was wrong and ungrateful. Those same arguments were used whenever I demonstrated I was upset over him missing out on my milestones. In his head, for instance, I couldn't get angry if he missed my high school graduation or if he didn't pay attention to any of the projects I developed in college, because he was the one paying for my education. I decided to stop complaining about this when I was younger, having realized I wouldn't be able to get him to see my side. This wedding incident felt like a turning point though, especially since he wasn't paying for anything this time. It made me accept that he doesn't care how much he contributed anymore, but still believes I don't have the right to be upset. I now realize there's no winning this. If he doesn't come, I'll be devastated. If he does, I'll always remember I had to force my own father to come to my wedding. At this point, I'm not even sure which is worse. A few days ago, I had a discussion with him over the phone, and I expressed all of the above and more. And as expected, he called me dramatic, accused me of alienating myself, and went off on me for talking to him the way I did. I just hung up on him. This is how our fights have gone since I was a teenager, and it never solves anything. We haven't spoken since. I sent him a long text, basically saying I didn't want to hear from him until he was ready to both give me a sincere apology and own up to the status of our relationship being his fault. This is all wishful thinking. I really don't think either are going to happen. I love my father, and I know he loves me to bits, but I can't do this anymore. He's been around my entire life and still barely knows me for who I am. It's his turn to make the effort. Right now, I'm trying to muster up excitement for my wedding. I lost most of it these past weeks. My fiance, my mom, and my friends are all trying to cheer me up, and it's starting to work. I'm definitely feeling a lot better than I was last week. I'm really grateful to have them in my life. So that's it for now. Thank you all for your support on my previous post. OP's father easily accepted other commitments before his daughter's milestones, but he couldn't do the same with her and her life. Throwing money around and using that as an excuse for caring is nothing less than being lazy and a cheap loved one. Relationships are a two-way street. Wow, I can't believe OP has had to basically beg her own father to go to her wedding. This should be the time in her life, and he does not seem to care. This man is all about himself. When she mentions to him how he has let her down, again, he calls her entitled. What a horrid man. Do you love your father and you know he loves you too? No, he doesn't. No father who loves his daughter would purposefully miss his daughter's wedding for work. She seems to interpret what he says as love, while not interpreting his crappy actions as a lack of love. Paying for your kid's education isn't some special gift, it's expected. He expects to get special credit to act like a neglectful jerk because of his bare minimum contribution. Plus, it sounds like it wasn't exactly a burden to him financially anyway. He outsourced his parenting to OP's mother with money. He's repeatedly shown OP who he is, but she can't quite bring herself to believe that's who he really is. OP should just accept he doesn't care that much, peace out of the relationship, and stop making the effort with him. I think she'll find that she will have to wait months, if not years, before he even notices she's withdrawn from his life. Karen sells me her house. Now she's demanding to buy it back. A couple of years ago, my wife and I bought a house from Pearl, not her real name. Pearl and her husband moved across the country for her husband's job. It's a beautiful house, and they put a lot of work into fixing it up. Everything was going okay for a while. Pearl would message us now and then. My wife grew up in a house next to Pearl's family. She would ask about how things were going, if we enjoyed the house, etc. At one point, she asked if she could see the house the next time she was in town, visiting family or something, and show some friends what it looked like with the renovations. We thought it was odd, but we would have allowed it. She never did end up visiting, so nothing came of it. This was just the beginning of some weird stuff. Almost a year ago, someone accidentally used our address to list their house on Zillow. It was a simple error of using an N instead of an S on the same road. Anyways, I guess Pearl's husband saw the listing and he got excited that we were selling the house. We know this because Pearl messaged us asking us about the house and if we were selling. We told her no, we weren't the ones who had listed it. Pearl continues to send us messages such as, "Oh, that's too bad. My husband got really excited about maybe moving back to that house because we love it so much, and life on this side of the country isn't as good as we thought it would be." Stuff like that. Eventually, she stopped messaging us. Next thing we know, a couple months later, we find out that Pearl and her family have moved back into town but are staying at a rental. She starts messaging us asking what price we would like to sell them the house for. We give them an amount that's a fair price according to the housing market. Pearl says that it's out of their budget and can't justify paying that, mixed with a few comments about how they cut us a deal when they sold it to us. I want to mention that she lied to our faces twice during the sale, claiming that the house had an AC when it didn't, and how they didn't have dogs, even though we could still smell dogs in the carpet that we had to replace, found dog toys in the air vents, and dog hair in the wall paint, so her deal wasn't as good as she likes to make it out to be. She goes radio silent for a while. Cut to 2 weeks ago. Due to some financial hardships, my wife and I are forced to put our house up for sale. We list the house, and of course, Pearl sees the legitimate listing. She makes a few comments about wanting to move into the house again and how the price is higher than what we paid her. We kindly let her know that this is our asking price, and if she's interested, she can make an offer through a realtor. Silence for a while, other than passive-aggressive comments on the community Facebook post about how she misses her old house. Now we have someone interested in buying the house, and he put forward an offer. We're waiting for funding and inspections to come through. Who messages us last night? Pearl. She comments on how we got to enjoy the renovations longer than she did, and other stuff to make us feel sorry for her. She asks if we're under contract, and we tell her we are. She asks with who. We say that it's not anyone we know personally, and we don't feel like disclosing that. She asks how much they offered. We tell her we got a fair offer. She keeps pushing. We let her know that we aren't comfortable letting her know. She's gone silent for now, but I'm sure we'll hear something from her again real soon, maybe once the house is sold. She's just so annoying. I get being attached to a house, but this is becoming borderline harassment. Edit. Thanks for the support, everyone. I have a problem setting boundaries with people, and I worry that I overreact to stuff like this, so it's nice to read about people in my corner. We will be going no contact, and if she tries it again, we will redirect her to our agent. If she keeps it up, we'll look into legal action. Why are you not blocking her number in social media? Quit driving yourself batty and ignore this woman. You owe her nothing. Would I be the jerk if I don't change my son's name, even though it may cause him to lose an inheritance? I, 24, female, got pregnant while I was taking a gap year traveling. I met a guy. I was 19 and he was 23. We had fun. I was working in a bar to make money while I explored his city. When I got pregnant, he lost interest really quickly. I understood, but I still chose to keep it. I went home and had my son. I also made sure to get child support. He could afford it. He did fight it though. I had to prove paternity and everything. Through that, his parents found out. They are well off. They've met my son and they truly do seem to love him. They've provided gifts for his birthday and Christmas. They helped me with extra money so I could complete my university without going into debt. They've taken us on vacation with them so they could spend time with him. They aren't my biggest fans, but we are cordial to each other. 3 months ago, my son's father passed. He was drunk at his bachelor party, tripped on the sidewalk and hit his head, and that was all she wrote. My son and I attended the funeral. We spent a week in that city so his grandparents could see him. They approached me with an offer. They had no other kids or grandkids. Their son was only 28, so he had lots of time to provide them legitimate kids. They did not say this, I'm just assuming, so they never thought about my son's name. They said that if I changed his surname to theirs legally, they would make him their primary heir. I think this is dumb. He's their only grandson, and they would deny him an inheritance because of his last name? I said I would consider it to be polite, and I've left it at that. I actually have a pretty good life as it is. My family has been very supportive, and because of the whole court thing, my son's father had to have life insurance with him as the beneficiary. Would it be nice for my kid to get a big sum of money? Yes. Do I want him to have the surname of a man who didn't want him to see him or love him? No. I've been talking to my family about it, and a few of them think I'm being a jerk for giving up this kind of money for my son. It's generational wealth, and I'm making the decision based on emotion. I think they're jerks for thinking money is the only thing that matters. I think I'll tell my son's grandparents that they can talk to him about it when he turns 16. He will be old enough to understand the implications, but young enough to not be tied professionally to his last name. I get where you're coming from in this sense that you aren't fond of him having a name that is tied to his dad who didn't want anything to do with him. However, I just want to give you some things to think about. His paternal grandparents did want a relationship with him and have helped out, so the last name is also tied to them who do want him in their life. You're looking at this as they will totally deny him an inheritance because of his last name, but they didn't say they would exclude him altogether. They said he would be the primary heir. Maybe that means without the last name that all property will be sold and all money will be split with other family members, charities, etc. But if he has their last name, that all properties and most money will go to him with little splitting of the money to anyone else. You think that you can wait until he's 16, but that's 11 years away. What if something happens to them before then? How do you think your son will feel if he doesn't get this and finds out he could have had generational wealth and never would have had to worry about money and all you had to do was simply change his last name? I mean, personally, if someone had told my mom that I could get generational wealth as long as she changed my last name and my mom didn't and I found out, I'd be mad that my mom didn't rename me. I accidentally bought a bat-infested mansion. My wife and I live in Washington State. We are young parents, born last November, and we're very desperate to buy a home and get set up to raise our kid. The place we were living in had a half-acre but was a trailer, so it was small and full of problems. Most of the houses in our area are above $800,000 for a postage stamp lot where you can lean out your window and touch your neighbor's house, so we looked outside our area. I have a fully remote job, so we picked a spot close to our favorite state park. The home we bought for $870,000, 20% down. It's a huge Victorian mansion on top of a hill with a big turret and a view of the water. The inspection showed a lot of projects, but nothing we couldn't handle over the course of a decade or more. Once my wife returns to work, it would be possible to burn down the equity and finance improvements. One thing in my report was evidence of rodents in the attic. We've dealt with rats and mice before by setting traps and thought very little of the problem. My mom talked about having squirrels in her attic that they had to shut out. Not a big deal. So, despite some hesitation about the repairs and fixes that might lie ahead, we bought the place. We closed on April 1st and moved in by mid-month. It was amazing. The location is incredible. We have guests in May, no problems. Then, towards the end of the month, we get a bat in our room at night. I quickly catch it in a bucket and I get it out through the window while wife and baby get out. I learn later that I should have kept it. We think we're close to the woods. This is just what happens sometimes if a window is open a crack. Then we have a guest staying in the bedroom in the furnished attic. They hear scrawling in the walls. We start hearing it while we're up there, where we put the TV in a futon. It's a carpeted living room type space up there. So we stake out the house and we see a horde of bats fly out from a tiny gap in the corner of our attic window dormer. We immediately call as many pest companies as we can and reach out to our insurance agent. I have work travel and come back. We have friends come to visit. We all get incredibly sick. Probably not associated to the bats, but histoplasmosis isn't impossible. At first, we are very concerned about the bats, but we think this might be addressable. Then it starts getting even crazier. Early July, after a week of being super ill, the first bat company comes. They review the house, tell us it's one of the worst infestations they've ever seen. There are likely thousands of bats, which means chances are high that a few of them do carry rabies. Also, that much fecal matter will definitely become a human health hazard even if it's above the drywall, because it will fester, mold, get wet, and drip through. The next day, another bat gets into the kitchen in the middle of the day while we're cooking. I catch it with my fishing net and squash it. The bat pest person told us to take it to the health department, so I did, but it ended up being too far gone to tell if it had rabies. Live bats are required. My wife is too concerned to keep staying there. She packs up baby and goes to live at my sister's. Our original house we had intended to either rent or sell to a developer, but everything happens in slow motion with a baby under one. Now we had to relocate back into it. I stay up in the house to deal with contractors in the health department. I'm still extremely sick, cough and sore throat. My wife and baby start their rabies exposure series per the health department. We're set to max out our insurance coverage costs. Even with coverage, we will end up paying $14,000 in medical expenses. So we start talking with the neighbors. Some of them even stake out the house with me while I take video of thousands of bats flying out. The health department comes to try and capture a live one. They can't get to one though. None are loose inside the house. They're all stuck behind drywall and plyboard panels and enmeshed into the insulation. I open up all the crawl space doors and seal the attic shut. Then I come out and there are 6 in the attic. I catch one and bring it to the health department. Now here we are, evacuated, living on 1/4 of our personal goods. Back to our trailer. During this time, we've been coordinating with lawyers, insurance, pest control, various contractors. I say this all in the context of not wanting to live in that home anymore. We love the neighborhood, but feel that this place is going to be a complete and absolute money pit. With enough love, attention, and improvement, and changes to the Fed's rates, we could probably sell it for $1.1 million or higher if it was proven bat-free, repainted, and some other aesthetic work was done. But it would take $150,000 to $200,000 to get there, so it would virtually be a wash. With the market teetering in a million stupid directions and the scale of severity of this problem, we are losing our minds. At least we have good Halloween costumes picked out this year. Update. We're just chugging along, still trying to piece together any semblance of a plan while struggling to keep our sanity. It's a lot of small steps, one at a time, and a lot of stress, and 12 ER visits to get all of our rabies shots. The expertise of some of you Redditors was astounding. Not a ton of help on figuring out our method to finance this, and I'll also point out $450,000 on our old place is a stretch. We'd be lucky to get above $360,000 without a lot of work. There's also a lot of family resistance to selling, as my mother owned it and lived in it after her divorce, and it's her fallback plan if her current spouse dies. Long story there too. Luckily, the Department of Fish and Wildlife does have some ways they can help. Not financially. They can help us get permitting and design for bat houses that can be put up in the state park. Our other neighbors are supportive of this too, because it would take bat pressure away from their houses too. The toughest thing we're dealing with though is anger and depression. Luckily, we also have an amazing little dude, our baby, who keeps us smiling no matter how bleak things get. I'm also finding it hard to be 100% committed to work and struggling to keep ahead of the opinions and office politics that my position has to contend with for success. My boss is very understanding, but I can tell this has definitely set me back a bit in a few ways. We are also pursuing a few other creative ventures to raise funds, but I don't want to break subreddit rules, so I'm leaving them off this update. If anyone is a good book editor or interior designer with art skills, please reach out. The world is indeed comic, but the joke is on mankind. I feel like I'm falling into a Lovecraftian madness. My dad is setting ridiculous rules for me if I want to move back in with him. I'm 22, male, and my dad remarried about 5 years ago. I lived with him until shortly beforehand, and then I moved in with my mom. My dad's wife has a son that's 38, and he needed a place to stay last year, and he declined because he didn't want someone that old living with them. I've had an apartment the last 3 years with roommates. I was going to the local college, but stopped about December of 2021, so I've been working a couple of jobs. I have a car and 2 roommates. We shared a 2-bedroom apartment. They both decided to move out with their girlfriends, so I need a place to stay. Plus, I can't afford an apartment plus tuition. Well, I want to get back in school and save up money for a new place. I asked my dad if I can move in with him. He got back to me last week and said I can move in on Labor Day weekend. He provided me the following rules. I can't have girls in the house, pull up in the driveway or cul-de-sac. No guy friends in the house after 8 p.m. or before 10 a.m. unless driving me to work or class. I can't drink or smoke. He can test me for this anytime he chooses. I have to cut the grass, shovel the snow, and complete a weekly grocery store run for his wife. I must attend class every day that I'm scheduled. I have to keep my own car, and I can't borrow his or his wife's. I have a midnight curfew. Exception is if I get off work after 11 p.m., then I have 2 hours to get home. Missing curfew means I can't come home for the evening. Being gone 3 straight days means I have to move out. I have to attend church with him twice a month. If his wife asks me to do something, I need to do it. If she asks me to do something and it makes me uncomfortable, call him and he will handle it. In return, he said he will do the following. Pay for 2 courses this semester. If I get a B or better, he will pay for 2 more courses next semester. He will provide me an employee referral at his job so I can get a better position for a second job. The security guards make $22 an hour, but it's overnight shift. It's not guaranteed placement, but several people's kids work overnights as security guards on cleaning crews. 6 months of rent-free living. If I move out January 1st, 2024, he'll give me $5,000 towards a new place. I think my dad should either help or just say no. These rules are absurd. I'm an adult. I have 2 jobs and pay for my own car and insurance. He said I can have guy friends over, but not women. I have a couple of good friends that are women, and it's weird inviting over some of my guy buddies, but not them. His requests are completely controlling. I think he made these rules so I would say no, and if I said yes, if I break the rules, he can kick me out anyways. So, should I request that I'm able to move in until I find a new place in a few months, and these rules are absurd? Yes, some of these rules are a bit daft, but 1. The chores that have been said are fair in lieu of paying rent and a fair contribution to running the household. They're about the sort of life your dad and his wife want to lead. They don't want your friends coming over at all hours and all that. They don't want to meet your girlfriend over breakfast. Moving back home at 22 is more like being in a house sharing arrangement than reverting to being a kid in the family home. They're being very clear with you about how they expect that to work, not unlike a lot of shared households. You're not moving back as a kid, nor staying as a guest. Whether you want to live like that with your parents will depend on how much you can't afford to rent somewhere else instead. You can try telling him that he either gives you a place to stay or he doesn't, but you don't get to kick off if he says, "No worries, we'll keep the guest room then." You're the jerk. Coworker took glucose tabs out of my locker because they taste like candy. About 12 years ago, I worked in security for a high-end resort. It was a small group, and the head of security was a retired police sergeant. He was actually pretty cool and had a really strong sense of right and wrong. We had a fridge in the back, and I would buy things like juice for when I had low sugar. I'm a type 1 diabetic. And snacks to keep my sugar from bottoming out since I walked 5 to 6 miles per shift. My juice disappeared. I replaced it with the same thing and it happened again. I got another one and wrote on it that I don't use cups. It disappeared again. We all had an idea who it was, but couldn't ever catch him. Until I walked in one day and saw the first shift guy making a meal out of my food. I asked him point blank what he was doing eating my food, and he said, "That's what you get for being late." I checked the clock and I was 2 minutes late. He even took food out of my locker and was snacking on my glucose tabs because they taste like candy. Somehow, the head of the department found out what he said and called me in to ask me about it. Seems this dude had been stealing food from the fridge since he started there, and while people weren't happy about it, they were willing to let it go since a lot of people brought food in and thought of it as a community property. This didn't apply to me because they viewed my food as medically necessary, and this was the first time that he went into someone's locker. My boss said this would be handled and dismissed me. When I came in for my next shift, all of this guy's stuff was gone and his locker was empty. My mom also worked there at the time, and I found out that because this guy had served in Iraq, he felt like everyone owed him. He would constantly come in late to work, pawn his work off on other people, and was the only one who didn't contribute to the communal fridge. If you needed to type up an incident report, you had to wait for him to finish browsing the internet on the office computer. We only had one at the time. I ran into him about 6 months after he was let go while I was doing laundry, and right as I was approaching the big machine, I was doing mine and then my boyfriend's laundry, he jumped in front of me and took it. This guy might be the most entitled jerk I've ever encountered. Edit. I told my mom about this post, and there was more that happened before I started. I normally wouldn't have added anything because it was already more than enough, but this was crazy. I guess he used to try to bring his enormous husky into the office with him, but the boss said he couldn't do that. Okay, the dog isn't in the office anymore. But less than a few hours later, the office received a report about a dog that was out in the car. He left him out there. What? I have 2 dogs. One we rescued just last December and he's 12. I wouldn't ever do something like that. When boss man pretty much asked him what the heck and said he can't do that, it's cruel. The guy said he wanted his dog near him but was told he couldn't bring him to work. Again, what the heck? Manager says I cannot clock out unless I get cleared by a manager. So to get started, some context. I work as a technician that does jobs in residential homes. We get several jobs on our routes at the beginning of the day. After we're done with our jobs, we send a message to our manager and the route service rep. If I'm done early and another tech is running behind, they will send that job to me. If there are no jobs left to be covered, we're cleared and we can head home. We also work 4 10-hour shift days, with the option to pick up a 5th day for overtime and choose between a half or a full day. Now on to the story. I like picking up 5th days for a little extra overtime. On one of the days I picked up, I had a family dinner I didn't want to miss, so I made it a half day. It was a busy day, and I didn't get to my last job until around 2:30. Lucky for me, the customer wasn't home and the job was rescheduled. I messaged my manager and route service rep that I was done. I was cleared by the service rep, but not the manager. I didn't think much about it since I was meant to be off 2 hours earlier, and they never add more jobs to you after your scheduled shift. So I just headed back to the office and clocked out and made it to my family dinner. The next day I worked, I opened my work phone to find a message from my manager an hour after I clocked out that day stating, You are not allowed to clock out unless cleared by a manager. At first I was like, uh-oh, I must have forgotten to add him to the message. I checked, and no, I definitely added him, and it shows he saw my message. So I took a screenshot of both messages and thought to myself, alright, I'll maliciously comply. If I don't get cleared, I won't clock out. So every day since then, I made sure I was cleared by a manager. Honestly, most of the time, all managers are really good at being on top of this, so I didn't think I would ever get to take advantage of this malicious compliance. But about a month later, I finally got my chance. On this fateful day, it was a busy one, and it was winter and we were getting some bad snow. I had several big jobs and was behind schedule. Finally, after finishing my last job at almost 8 p.m., I messaged my manager, the same one that gave me that rule, and the route service rep that I was done. I started heading back, wanting to get out of the snow and get home. I got home at about 8:30 and I still wasn't cleared by my manager, so I didn't clock out. I messaged him again, asked him if he can clear me so I can clock out. No answer. I said and debated how much I can milk this. After all, I do get paid hourly. Well, I didn't want to take it too far, so I ended up calling him just before 9. He picked up confused. I told him I've been waiting for him to clear me. Still confused, he responded, "Yeah, of course I cleared." I remind him that he instructed me to not clock out until after I was cleared by a manager. Then I thanked him, hung up, and noted in the message that I called the manager and was cleared. It's been several months since then, and to this day, that manager still sticks to everything he says. And to this day, I still milk an extra 15 to 30 minutes of pay every time a manager forgets to clear me before I remind them. Wife's ex-affair partner sent her flowers at work, and she decided to keep them. I, 38 male, am upset that my wife, 38 female, kept flowers sent to her work from the guy she had an affair with. The affair ended 6 months ago, and I felt that we were finally getting to a place where I don't actively distrust her. She's a teacher, and they were delivered yesterday, her first day with students for the semester. She called me between classes to thank me for sending her black roses and wanted to know what they symbolized to me. She was excited, genuinely excited, and I was confused. When I explained that I didn't send them, she got really quiet and her tone and mood dramatically dropped. I asked if he sent them, and she said she didn't know, there's no note, but if it wasn't me, she didn't know who else would send them. I told her if they're from him to not accept them, to which she responded she already accepted the delivery and doesn't know who they're from. Cue the start of her next class, and we don't talk about it again for the day. I did not specifically tell her to throw them away or anything like that, but I felt like my "you can't accept those if they're from him" set my expectation clearly. I had already planned a mini celebration for that afternoon when she got home. I had already bought her flowers for the house, cooked her favorite dinner, and bought her something she wanted for her classroom. We had a great afternoon, and the flowers at her work didn't show up. Today, she sends me a picture of her class, related to a text conversation we were having, and almost off frame, I can see the flowers on her desk. I ask if that's what I'm seeing. She confirms. I ask if he sent them. She said he had sent her a text message later that day confirming that they were from him. At this point, I'm like, what? Why would you keep them? She basically says they're just flowers. She doesn't care about them at all, and you know how much I like flowers, and I've never gotten flowers at work before, so I just decided to pretend they're from you. Then, when I push back, she tells me I never made it clear I expected her to throw them away, but she says she will, and shortly thereafter sends me a picture of them and bent up and stuffed into her small trash can. I'm very upset about this, but not sure if I'm blowing this out of proportion in my own mind. I'm fairly confident she's not been talking to him and that she has not been around him. She's had her location on her phone on since I decided to give this another chance. I don't check her phone, I don't have the passcode, and I told her I didn't want it when she offered. That if I wanted to go through her phone, I'd do it in front of her. I'm wishing I could silently check her phone right now. This will start a fight if I demand to check it when she gets home. Edit. She came home after work rather upset. Usually I'm the calm one, but honestly, I was just seeing red. We had a heated discussion where I rehashed my position, and she told me my feelings about it were nonsense, they were just stupid flowers, as she rolled her eyes. Then I told her this wasn't working for me. I actually meant the way she was treating me on how I felt about the flowers, but she took it to mean our reconciliation and stormed out of the house with a few of her things. In a later phone call, I offloaded a lot of crap. Most of it she deserved, but some of it she really didn't. I got a text from one of her teacher friends that she was at her house. She called me this morning while driving to work, and I really wanted her to apologize. She ended up telling me her cheating wasn't just her fault and that I had some part in it too. While I'm fine admitting I'm not perfect and there are areas I can improve, I sure as heck am not responsible for your cheating. I don't yell, like ever, but I yelled at her this morning. Then I blocked her for most of the day. I'm done with her. I actually hired a lawyer during the affair and we've signed an MSA. I had asked the lawyer not to send the final decree for signature after she asked for a second chance. I called him at lunch and told him to send it. He wasn't surprised to hear from me, unfortunately. Honestly, the fact that she kept his phone number and didn't block him is a huge red flag. That would be a must for me. He's showing he still has interest, and she's not doing anything to let him know she's not interested. Hopefully, you're already in therapy. If not, it's necessary for both of you if you plan to stay with her. How should I, male 45, deal with my wife, who's 47, who would prefer working for minimum wage instead of using her law degree? Important background. My wife has chronic fatigue syndrome. She worked full-time for a few years after we got married. She's an attorney and was earning $75,000 a year. In 2010, however, her illness became too much to manage while also holding down a job, and for the next 9 years, I was the sole breadwinner for our family. We've paid roughly $500 each year for her to maintain her law license even though she's not been using it. This has been an incredible strain, particularly once we added a couple of kids. But during that time, I never pushed her to go back to work because I understood that it might just be too much for her to deal with. But 4 years ago, a mutual friend of ours asked my wife to occasionally spend a few hours per week helping out in a clerical role for minimum wage, and she agreed. This gradually turned into my wife working 15 to 20 hours a week and occasionally working as much as 35 hours a week. She would come home utterly exhausted and would sleep through most of the following weekends. After a few months of this, I pointed out to her that if she can physically manage regularly working in an office for that amount of time, perhaps she should consider doing much more lucrative legal work instead. I noted that she could work from home, no need to get dressed up or deal with a commute, and that if she billed just 5 hours per week, 1 hour per weekday, she could roughly double our household income. Even so, I only offered this as a consideration. I did not insist. Several opportunities have presented themselves over the past few years for her to resume work as a lawyer. Although she sometimes expressed minimal interest, she did not actually pursue any of them. When our friend asks, she continues to do the clerical work at minimum wage. Last December, after a year of particularly acute financial stress, I finally put my foot down. I told my wife that the family needed her to start earning more. A small wills and trust practice would be a low-pressure approach that would give her all of the scheduling flexibility she could possibly need. I reiterated that I was only asking her to do work from home for 5 hours each week, and I offered to help her get started. I also started setting deadlines by which I would ask for her to report progress towards the goal of starting a new law practice. Over the first 6 months of this year, I know she has, grudgingly, made some effort to move in this direction, but still does not seem inclined to actually start doing the legal work. I just about reached my wit's end. I love my wife, and divorce is absolutely not an option, but I'm starting to really resent her unwillingness to take the steps necessary to help carry the family's financial burden. I've used every gentle approach I can think of to tell her how important this is to me, but to little avail. A couple of weeks ago, I was literally about 10 minutes away from demanding that she find a marriage counselor for us to talk to. I was rehearsing in my head the exact way I wanted to approach it, but I ended up pulling back at the last minute because I don't think she would take that well, and I also felt like that was one of those bridges that, once crossed, can never be uncrossed. So Reddit, I'm asking for advice. Should I tell her that we need to see a marriage counselor? Should I take some other approach? Edit. To provide additional context, I'm a public interest attorney focusing on civil rights and civil liberties with a nonprofit that my wife and I founded together. Although I am able to take on amazing cases, our organization is much more nonprofit than most. We bring in an average of $45,000 to $55,000 per year, and we have 2 sets of student loans to pay off. For the past decade, we've lived in her parents' basement in a rural county, and the amount I am able to bring in by myself is just barely enough to keep us afloat, with zero money being set aside for retirement. The 20 hours of work per month, not per week, I'm asking her to do, which I would be willing to help with, would bring in an additional $15,000 to $30,000 per year. Edit. Someone could drop $1 million on our family tomorrow, and we would not choose to live anywhere else. My in-laws are amazing people, which is how they produce the amazing woman that I love. I feel that many commenters do not appreciate the fact that 2 people can love each other very much and be mostly very happy, but still have one particular, significant issue that creates tension or frustration. You don't divorce someone you love and are very happy living with over one frustration, even if that frustration becomes quite significant. You look for ways to fix the problem, which is why I wrote this post in the first place. And for people who question having kids, even though they're expensive, I suggest a little perspective. For the entirety of human history up until just a few decades ago, pretty much everyone alive was much, much poorer than my family is right now. I believe that kids, especially ours, are a blessing and a gift. No amount of material wealth or comfort could be worth not having them. My wife has scammed multiple people on Facebook and she lied to me about it. So about a week ago, I got this Facebook message from some lady saying that my wife scammed her out of some money shipping baby clothes. I went to my wife about it before talking to the lady, and my wife said, "I've never seen this lady in my whole life. She's just trying to get you to send her $30. She then went on to block the lady, and that was that. Well, this morning I got a message request from a different lady saying how my wife scammed her also out of $120, and she sent me screenshots of her and my wife's conversation and transactions. I unblocked the other lady, and she also sent me conversations and transactions. And apparently there are others as well. So I now have 3 ladies in my DMs with proof that my wife scammed them out of money, lied to them about having a miscarriage, and said that she was on bed rest and couldn't. She's at work as a bartender right now. She's not on bed rest. The thing that irks me the most is how quick she was to lie to me and block the lady. It just didn't feel right. But I thought, oh well, she wouldn't lie to me about something like this. Now I'm just sitting here wondering how much more she's lied to me about, and I don't feel like I can even trust her anymore. My wife doesn't know that I have all of this information. Any idea what I should do next? Her reaction is a bit sus. She just said, "I've never seen her before. She's trying to get money from you?" I'd be like, what? Who is this? Why do they think that? Give me their details so I can clear this up. I'd put a hold on my credit and check all of my accounts, to be honest. If it turns out she's really doing this, I'd find a divorce attorney. If these people are genuine victims and they found you, they can also find friends, family, and employers. OP. Her reaction was what drove me to believe these people. Took my phone and blocked this lady and denied. But from the messages this lady had with my wife, I fully believe that my wife has been scamming people. And on top, she lied to them, said that I had shipped their packages, lied and said she had a miscarriage and had to be bedridden, and basically just tried to play the victim the entire time when she had no intentions of giving this lady her stuff. She even sold her some clothing that she had already given to somebody else. And how quick she was to block the lady is what I found suspicious, but I didn't do anything because I believed her. Apparently, the original lady made a post on some mom's group Facebook page, and that's how they all found me. Plus, like a week ago, my wife just randomly deleted her Facebook account, and it all lines up perfectly for when the original lady threatened to make a public post about my wife. They paid her on a PayPal that isn't her actual PayPal. She's at work right now, but I'm going to try to do more digging into this later. But basically, that whole Facebook group has my wife on a no-sell list because this isn't the first time this has happened apparently. The original lady who contacted me invited me and showed me the public post that she made shaming my wife for what she did. Talk to her about why she's doing it and what else she's lied about. She should be worried about the police too. OP. I don't think she'll be honest at this point. I was invited to the Facebook group my wife sold all of this stuff in, and they have a whole 3 posts talking about how she's on a ban list and she's cheated other people out of their money too. Update. I confronted my wife with all of the evidence that she's absolutely guilty of doing this, including the money trail, and I had my phone recording everything and a hidden security camera going to watch it all, and she still denied it. And then told me that I was a joke of a husband for not believing her in this whole ordeal. And she continued to go off on me for 45 minutes and just say awful things. Anytime I would bring up a point, she would just dismiss it and continue to gaslight me. So I'm taking my 2-year-old with me and we're going to my buddy's house for the rest of the week. My husband's female best friend is pregnant and she says that it's his. My husband came home around 6 a.m. and threw his keys on the side and went upstairs without saying anything to me. I thought this was a little rude and I walked up after him telling him that we need to talk, but he said he was tired and needed to sleep, which just made me angry because I was serious. I told him halfway up the stairs that I knew about him and Laura, to which he then looked at me confused. I explained my side and the text and what it seemed like, and he ended up laughing in my face. This filled me up with so much petty rage because I've had enough of being walked on, so I pushed past him into our room and I got a suitcase from under the bed and started to pack his stuff for him. He started shouting and saying really horrible things, but I didn't hear most of it because I was crying uncontrollably and busy ramming every item of clothing he owned. Most of it didn't fit, but he could come back and collect the rest later. One insult that stood out to me was, "Crazy jerk!" And this is where I snapped, and I said some horrible things too. I know I called him a bad husband, but in more of a rude tone. He ended up leaving with his suitcase I packed and a plastic bag after I said I would get my dad involved if he didn't leave. Afterwards, I took a recommended comment and I told my family everything. My brother didn't care, but my father was so angry there might have been steam coming from the phone after the call. I haven't heard from my soon-to-be ex-husband, but his response to my question was complete disrespect, and I wasn't able to hold it in for much longer. I'm sure what I did was a complete overreaction until I texted Laura's mother since I said I would do that. She didn't reply until 11 a.m., but basically what happened is that she only met my husband 2 years ago, which I'm guessing was during his constant overtime. This made me so angry that I texted Laura something petty, which I don't regret. I hadn't replied to her yet, so I told her that she can have him, and I can't wait till the same thing happens to her and she gets cheated on. She hasn't replied yet or seen it. I've screenshotted everything she said and the picture, and I'll be contacting a lawyer later on. Nothing else has really happened, and if it does, I'll update. Thanks everyone. Update. Husband messaged and I ignored it, and Laura left me on read. Husband messaged that he's sorry and wants to come home and needs to talk about Laura's message. Not sure what he's going to say about it, but I'm going to message him back to meet me somewhere else because I don't want him in my house right now. Not sure what he's going to say, but I'm ready for the lies and gaslighting. Edit. I'm really disappointed in Reddit. I thought this could be a post event and have men and women help and give advice and listen to me so I can finally feel like I'm being heard. And I'm getting a lot of crappy comments and people spamming me saying I'm scummy for lying and that they'll find me. If you're one of those people, please leave me alone. Yes, I have left out some information and I'm not updating immediately, but I've been so tired these past 2 days and I really don't have the ability nor resistance to keep typing up massive updates. I took some time off of work to figure stuff out, but I'm not looking forward to the amount piled up from my missed days. Love you all, and I wish you all the best, especially for the people that went through what I'm going through right now. Am I the jerk for dismissing my rude daughter's feelings? Am I out of line? I'm female 45, and my daughter is 18. Recently, I just lost my aunt. My daughter has always been a closed-off and reserved person. However, she's a little immature when she doesn't get what she wants, and is very snide and in your face sometimes during these occasions. When my aunt passed, my sister came over and has been here ever since, for about 4 weeks now, when we arranged the funeral and reception. My daughter did not cry or look upset at all, even though she'd sometimes go to look after her great aunt on the days her great uncle needed to go out, since she was bedbound and completely paralyzed and unable to speak. You'd expect some sort of reaction, right? But she had none. She'd avoid her great aunt a lot, and she never even talked to me about her. For this reason, I assumed she was just detached, as a lot of kids usually are, and left her alone. However, since her aunt came to stay with us and brought her 3 kids, she's been very bratty and complains when she has to clean up after them because they're quite spoiled. She's like this every time they come to stay because my sister is quite an unhygienic person and she and her kids have had lice for years. She didn't say anything to them since my aunt is grieving, so she hides in her room for the whole day because she feels stuffy and repulsed, always asking me when will they leave. I understand why she feels this way. I don't like how the kids and my sister crowd my home and they don't clean up after themselves. But they're family and we're grieving, even if she's not. She even hated the reception, not serving the guests, family and family friends, and looked annoyed when I told her so. And she said she just wanted to sit there. It was very embarrassing for me. All she needed to do was hand out water. I told her not to be so mean, as they're family and her aunt is grieving. But she, being immature, narrowed her eyes at me and told me she feels trapped in this house, wanting space, before she went back to her room. Even when I ask her to come downstairs and spend time with me. She's usually very sweet, smart and mature, even emotionally, and very perceptive, but for the past few weeks, she's been more reclusive and bratty than usual, even more so than other times when her aunt has been around. Am I right in being dismissive of her attitude and feelings? It seems to me, as of recently, there's been a bad change in her. Even if she doesn't care about her great aunt passing, someone who has taken care of her before developing this illness and who she's known since she was young, she should at least think of her aunt's needs. Honestly, I'm quite annoyed. My mother told me I should just leave her alone to herself, but she needs to be kinder. Edit. I admit that tradition has influenced a lot of my decisions and my own personality, and that has in turn affected my daughter as much as I ignored it. I'll be having a long discussion with my sister about her problems, trying to sort out her hygiene as well, and making her go back home, and giving my daughter a much-needed apology. I don't want to lose her, as many of you had pointed out, that the longer I continue on this route, the higher the likelihood she'll cut me off. I'll talk to her, and I'll try to help her out however she needs me to. Unfortunately, I'm not in America, But I have called the social services on my sister before, and they closed the case after a very short investigation. I will not be calling them again due to their terrible service, but I will force my sister to get her act together by completely barring her from my house until she takes my advice. Only until she has begun to take care of her own kids will I allow her near my own. I will also be trying my best to earn my daughter's forgiveness. You're the jerk. It isn't your daughter's job to be an unpaid maid to a family so unhygienic they carry lice. That's absolutely repulsive and places your entire household at risk. And obviously, it isn't just their grief if this is how they live. I wouldn't want to be around that level of illness or neglect either. Why don't you try cleaning up after them and get lice and see how you like it? And also, who likes a funeral reception? What kind of demented Better Homes and Gardens party planet are you living on? Stop alienating your daughter for no reason because family is no excuse for what you describe. You're the jerk. I ignored my husband so much that he went away without telling me. I, Carla, 30, am 6 months pregnant with mine and my husband's, Harry, 31, first baby. During this pregnancy, I've been very exhausted every day and would usually come home from work and go to bed an hour later. Then I'd wake up at midnight and reheat whatever Harry had made us for dinner. For context, I've been part of a huge work project that's been going on for months, and I've been extremely overworked. On top of this, my husband doesn't have a job at this moment and isn't looking for one unless I remind him to. I've been working overtime to get as much money as I can before maternity leave. Our anniversary was on the 6th of August, and I'd asked him if we could have a romantic dinner at home and then snuggle up to watch TV under a warm blanket. I thought it was a wonderful idea since I was too tired to go out, and because I knew that Harry was doing most, if not all, of the household chores. However, he seemed a little annoyed when he agreed, but I thought nothing of it. The next morning, Harry seemed quite cold towards me and barely looked me in the eyes. Once I got home from work, he wasn't there. But that was normal since he could have been out with friends or at an interview, and so I went to sleep. I woke up at 11 that night to see that I was still alone in the house, so I checked my phone. I had about 8 missed calls from Harry and a long text. I'm summarizing, but the text read, "I understand how tired you are because of this pregnancy and you having to work extra hours most days, but I'm over being ignored every day and having a 5-minute conversation with you every so often. You expect me to do all the housework and plan our boring anniversary alone. I'm really annoyed, so I'm staying at a friend's tonight. Text me when you see this." Of course, I called and texted him about being sorry and wanting to talk, but I never got an answer. In the morning, I called my boss about having a day off and spent most of it waiting for Harry and planning my apology. However, when he came home, he silently handed me a rose and a card saying that he loves me but needs a few days away from me to figure out what he's going to say and do. Then, those days became a week. This part happened on the 13th, 8 days later. I messaged him every day and he would constantly say he needed one more day or just another night at his friend's to figure all of this out. But on the 13th, I decided to go to his friend's house who he was staying with to confront him. So I drove over, nearly 30 minutes away, and banged on the door so hard that I could hear it echo from the inside. By this point, I'd realized that I should have put in more effort to our relationship, but he also should have talked to me about this instead of just running away. Harry's friend came to the door and was confused, but pleased to see me. He seemed a little on edge as I talked to him, and he had to break the silence every so often with comments about my pregnancy and how he couldn't wait to meet the baby. Finally, we stopped talking, and I practically demanded to see Harry, saying that I wanted to apologize, but also explain how childish he was being by hiding from me. The thing that I found absolutely hilarious, but actually not at all, was that his friend said that Harry wasn't there and had left for Ireland on the 9th. Ireland! To say I was absolutely furious and extremely confused would be such an understatement. His friend invited me in, and we sat down to talk. Turns out that Harry had told his friend of our problems and had come up with the solution of going on a holiday as a couple to sort everything out and learn to love each other again, in Harry's words. So of course, his friend thought this was a lovely idea and helped him book the flight on the evening of the 5th, the first time he had stayed at his friend's house. Since it was a last-minute booking, Harry's friend had stayed up with him for quite a while before they found a flight who was taking a few more passengers due to canceled tickets. His friend then explained how he had been confused when I arrived at the door, but didn't want to say anything about the holiday in case it had ended early due to us arguing. Harry's return ticket is booked for the 20th of August. I'm just so angry and quite heartbroken, to be honest. I messaged him the moment his friend had finished talking, and Harry only responded an hour ago with nothing more than a "had to figure things out, sorry." So now I'm home alone again and trying to figure out what I'm going to do or say when he gets home. Anyway, thanks for reading about how my life is going. Side note, I'm from the UK, so Ireland isn't as far as people think since I'm not American, but it still is far. Other side note, a question that keeps repeating is, where did he get the money from without you noticing? So I'll go ahead and explain that. He has a bank account with his money from when he worked as a teenager and a little into his 20s before we met, and a few years ago we agreed not to touch that money and add to it every so often. It was a backup savings account, so I'm assuming that he took the money from there since it wasn't from the joint account. Edit. 6 hours later. I knew this post would get attention, but I assumed it would only be a little. I've never used Reddit before, but I've seen it on TikTok a few times, so I thought posts only become popular on there. I was upset when I posted this and didn't think about how I'd handle all of the judgments and conspiracies once I'd calmed down. I appreciate the hard truths, empathy, and/or advice given to me here, but I'm not divorcing him, changing the locks, or calling a lawyer or anything like that. Update. It's the 17th now. I've had a longer time to think. I'm not deciding anything until our talk, but I definitely won't be staying in my home with him after this. I can't trust him to not run away again. I'll talk more about this on my actual update, but I've gained some self-respect, and I'm realizing that he's being the jerk. I talked to my mom, and she's happy for me to move in with her on the 21st, and I'm free to stay for as long as I need to. How many tickets did he book? Is he alone? OP. 2 tickets as far as his friend knows, and I don't know who he took with him, but I'd like to assume it's a different friend or a relative, or that it just wasn't used. Guess I'd be waiting at the airport with a sign with his name on it. Just stand there casually and tell him that you're his ride. Imagine if the affair partner doesn't know that he's married and his wife is pregnant. She's gonna be shocked when she sees you. Yeah, either he went with a girlfriend who gets to meet the pregnant wife, or he went alone because he was super sad and seeing her there waiting for him might be a good way to get started on repairing their Yeah, sure, he totally went alone, didn't he? Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or Harry? Please let us know. Harry should have studied harder at Hogwarts. He's really not doing this life thing right. You're upset that I'm the top performer? Then you get yourself a bare minimum employee. For background, my jobs have always been geared towards data entry, as that's what I'm best at. I've always typed over 120 words per minute, and I love finding new keyboard shortcuts to save me time and just be more efficient overall. Not a brag, trust me. Because of this skill, I've always excelled in prior roles that utilized it. That is, until my current career. I've been with this company for almost 3 months now. As with a lot of data entry jobs, this one has weekly productivity that you must meet. By week 2, I was meeting productivity once I grasped the role. This fueled me to try and get even faster. I learned the programs I was to be using and used simple keyboard shortcuts to toggle between programs, close them, used Excel formulas, etc. You get the idea. If there's a way to save time, I'll find it. We got the team productivity email yesterday, and I see that I tripled what's expected of a single employee in an entire week. My numbers skyrocketed to levels that haven't been reached before. Now, here's the really fun part. Rather than getting any sort of praise, this company has felt anti-praise since I started, or being asked how I did it, I got an email from management stating my numbers are concerning, and that they're essentially opening up an investigation to see if I cheated somehow. I even received a screenshot of others' numbers in one specific area, with management stating it's impossible to have that much of a lead over those who have been here for years. My numbers were in the 800s, while the second highest was 300 in a week. Today, my boss calls me and says she's been spending the day checking my work, and so far everything's been accurate. Mind you, this investigation didn't start with her. She was just asked to check my work and was reporting what she had found. But it's all accurate. She says I can continue with what I'm doing since she found no problems. Now, I learned quickly that this isn't the type of place to be praised. There's zero incentive for anyone to go above and beyond if it's just going to be questioned. Now, to clarify, I fully understand that if something seems off, a company is going to want to check and ensure I'm understanding the work and entering it properly, especially with a new employee. But to email me stating it's concerning and impossible prior to even checking my work is where I have the issue. They shouldn't even have told me that they had to look into it. They were told my numbers were accurate, and there has been radio silence since. No apology, no praise, no "how did you do it?" in hopes that I can show the rest of my team so we can get caught up one day. So with what little knowledge of Excel I had, I made a spreadsheet that tallies my accounts as I go, so I can pace myself, and I'm now alerted as soon as I meet the goal so that I can stop working without going over. I did add just a tiny bit more wiggle room to my spreadsheet as to not accidentally go under productivity to where they would have reason to use corrective action, but just ever so slightly above the bare minimum. If they're going to treat me like a bare minimum employee, they're going to get a bare minimum employee. Edit. I'm very much looking for new employment and I'm open to any suggestions for remote work if you have leads on a company that will utilize and appreciate the skills I have to offer, located in the US. Am I the jerk for expecting my very rich sister to pitch in on my wedding after she said she would? I'm female 35. My mother married my stepdad when I was 17. He had a daughter from a previous marriage, Ellie, who's 29. We were never close because when they moved in with us, Ellie was super clingy, would always follow me around and basically stalk me in my own house. Your typical know-it-all, barely left the house, so basically had zero friends that weren't online. So Ellie managed to graduate early and get into a really good college on scholarships, then got a master's there as well. She's in engineering and her college is like apparently one of the best ones for engineering. So straight after graduating, she was earning a crazy amount. She's been rubbing this in my face ever since she got the acceptance letter. When she was home, she was always wearing the university hoodie, always talking about what she's doing at college, sending videos of robots and crap into the family group chat. Now that she's earning so much, it's things like her paying off our parents' car loans for Christmas or getting extravagant gifts for everyone. We had a few fights about it, but we always made up. Why were you fighting her about it? So now on to this year. I got engaged last year in February to my fiance, who's 32. I asked my sister if she would pitch in, and she said she would help out. Knowing she had the money, I got to plan my dream wedding. I was so excited about planning our big day. That was until I showed her the plans and she pulled the rug from beneath my feet. She asks me how I'm paying for it. My husband and I didn't go to college, so we're not high earners, and I reminded her that she said she would help. She's now saying that she won't help pay for it and she will at the absolute most pay for my dress. I told her it's unfair of her to lie to me and only tell me after planning everything that she isn't actually going to help. She blew up at me over us not even being close in the past and blaming me for it. It takes two people to bond. But she claims everything is my fault. We argued for a bit, and now she's not even paying for my dress. All the wedding planning I've done has been for nothing now. My parents are split, with my mom saying Ellie needs to honor her word and let me have the wedding I planned, and we all pitch in what we can afford. My stepdad is angry I asked her in the first place and dug up some old arguments from when I was 17. Am I the jerk for expecting her to do what she said? You're the jerk. Someone saying they'll help with a wedding is in no way indicating that they'll pay for the whole thing. Just because she has money doesn't mean you're entitled to it, and when dealing with wedding budgets, you should always find out what people are actually willing to spend and not count on the money until it's in your hand. You and your mother are delusional thinking Ellie ever agreed to, or should have to, pay for your wedding. You're the jerk. She's your younger stepsister you basically had no use for and then seemed to be jealous of. Apparently, she did say she'd help, and offering to buy your dress is helping. That's generous help, I'd say, all things considered. I don't see where she signed on to pay for whatever else you chose to set up. You're not entitled to her wealth. She's earned it and it's 100% hers. It's nice that she's chosen to share some of it with family at times, but she owes you nothing. Your thinking is absurd. Have the wedding you can afford and be happy with it. Am I the jerk for not sharing my inheritance with the rest of my family? My family situation is messy. I, 25 female, was engaged 4 years ago to my high school sweetheart. My fiance cheated on me with my sister, who's 28. We had never had a good relationship even as kids, so after I found out, I went scorched earth, both of them. She was in love with my fiance, but he dumped her within 2 weeks and was back trying to get me to forgive him. I didn't. My parents were initially on my side, but my sister had a nervous breakdown after she was dumped and was hospitalized, so they changed their tune to, "It's over now and you can't be mad forever." I dumped them too and went on to grad school on the other side of the country. My grandfather was livid with the whole thing, disowned my sister, and chewed out my parents. Sometimes it felt like he was the only one who was on my side and understood. I was able to get my job to let me work remotely and move back home to take care of him when he got sick last fall, and I was heartbroken when he passed a few months ago. I had been in limited contact with my parents since I came back, mostly because I didn't want to be an obstacle to my dad seeing my grandfather, but with the understanding that any discussion of my sister or what happened would end that. It turns out that my grandfather left me virtually everything. He left enough for my father to cover a debt and some token stuff for a couple of other relatives, but he wrote letters for everyone and did a videotape with his attorney explaining what his intentions were. I knew that he had done well for himself, but he lived a pretty simple lifestyle, so I didn't realize how much money and assets he really had. I would give it all up to have my pawpaw back, but even after taxes, it's set for life money. My parents are pretty mad about it. One of the reasons stated for cutting them out was how disappointed my grandfather was with how they had treated me growing up versus my sister and over the fiancé debacle. There were other reasons, but that's what they're fixated on. The will is pretty airtight apparently, so my parents want me to do the right thing and share it equally between me, them, and my sister. Their argument is that I don't need it. I make more than both of them combined, and this would allow them to retire. My sister is not doing great and can't hold a job, so this would ensure she has something for when my parents pass. I don't want to. My grandfather's wishes were crystal clear, and also I kind of don't feel like doing more than the minimum for any of them. They've been telling me that I'm being vindictive because of a mistake years ago. I can't deny that there might be a little vindictiveness there. I don't want them to suffer necessarily, but I also don't feel like they deserve my help. Not the jerk. I'm so sorry your pawpaw is gone. He sounds very loving and interesting by the way you speak about him here. That said, cut contact with them and walk away. That's what he would have wanted, and he granted you the means to do so. Walk tall. You've earned this. Not the jerk. Don't share money with your truly terrible family. They don't deserve it. Take a nice long vacation and cut them off completely. My girlfriend just gave birth to our first baby. I know I'm not the father, and I revealed it as soon as she gave birth. I found out when she was about 6 months along. The other guy, Brian, approached me at my work. "Are you Sarah's boyfriend?" I said yeah and asked what he wanted. He said he was sorry that he had been hooking up with her, and he swore he never knew that she was with someone. I still don't believe that. He then pulled out his phone to show me the text between them. They had been linking up for at least a year. Then she found out she was pregnant, and they came to an agreement to just pretend that the baby was mine. In return, she wouldn't lose her perfect life, and he wouldn't be responsible for a baby. I knew it was weird. We had been having problems trying to have a baby, and all of a sudden she got pregnant so easily. But he explained that he had been thinking about it, and he recently became a Christian. He said that he couldn't live his life knowing that I was living a lie while his child didn't even know their real father. So yeah, I told him I'd keep in touch and to not say that he said anything just yet. I've had a lot of time to think, but ultimately I decided to wait until she gave birth, to hurt her in the most vulnerable moment. I'll spare the details, but she went into labor, the baby was born, and was taken to NICU to be monitored for a bit. What should have been a beautiful moment of me holding my baby was the most heartbreaking time of my life. Just knowing he was not mine really hurt me. Once she was sewn up and comfortable, I started packing up my stuff to leave. She asked where I was going, and I just told her. I know I'm not the baby's father. You can act all shocked, but I know. Just ask Brian to come. I'm positive he'll sign the birth certificate. Then I left. She's been calling my phone over and over, even sending texts as I type this, and has even gotten her sister to call me a few times. It was hard pretending these last few months, but I think I'm satisfied. I feel really heartbroken though. I was planning to propose to her on the day our baby was born. I was gonna make her the happiest woman ever. Oh well, I'm just going to cope now. Update. My head hurts, but I'm home and safe. I'll clear up a few things. Brian is going to be in the baby's life if it's his. I don't care what anyone says. I'm sure the kid isn't mine. I'll go get tested, but me and Brian have been in contact since last night, and there isn't a doubt in my mind. For those of you calling me a psychopath or whatever, I don't really care. You'll all forget about this post in a day anyway, while I'll have to live with this crap for the rest of my life. What I did wasn't amazing, but I don't care. All I ever did was treat her amazing, and now this is how she pays me back. If you think this is fake, go read something else. Doesn't matter to me. Update. I just wanted to start by saying I would have updated sooner, but it takes a bit to get test results back. I've also been working on myself in the time being. Thanks for all the support. I'll cut to the chase. I'm not the father, but I already knew that deep down. Brian and the baby are a match, so that pretty much answers that question. He's very excited to be a dad, even despite the circumstances. We've kept in touch this whole time, and he's actually a really great guy. Goes to church now, volunteers at shelters, etc. I'm not sure if we'll continue to stay in touch after this, but I wouldn't mind getting a drink with him every once in a while. I hope the kid does great in life. He should with Brian as his dad. As for Sarah, around the time I posted, she had asked Brian to be with her officially since there was nothing to hide. As far as I know, he's not taken her up on that offer and just wants to co-parent for the sake of being in his kid's life. I think that's very smart of him, honestly. Me and her have talked as well. We talked about where it all went wrong. She felt as though I wasn't there for her fully and just felt unfulfilled, which I understand. I wasn't always the best guy, but I treated her the best I could. I guess it just wasn't meant to be. She started crying, and I did give her a hug, but I made sure she knew it wasn't because I cared about her. She's offered to stay friends and for me to visit her if I want, but I declined. I'm not really interested in keeping up with her and her kid, but I did give her the stuffed animal I was planning to give our kid someday as a gift. She's been staying with her mom and has fully moved out all of her stuff. She asked me to keep her number, but I blocked her the same day she finished moving out. So it's just me now. I'm not gonna lie, my heart has been super heavy, but I think I'll be okay. There's a cute girl at my work and we've been talking. She's a single mom and has been awesome so far. I explained that I wanted to go slow because of my recent breakup and she understands. We have hooked up once or twice, nothing serious yet. I just want to be by myself for now, but I'll likely give her a shot when I'm ready. That's it for now. I'm depressed, but I'm working out now at least. I never want to talk to Sarah and will hopefully never see her again. It sucks because she was such a big part of my life, but that's gone now. Thanks for the support. I'll answer any questions you may have. Just wanted to mention that I still don't feel bad about what I did. I can tell she's still hurting, but I definitely think she deserves it. Update. Been roughly 8 months now. No, I don't talk to Sarah. Forget her. Haven't seen her. Last I heard, she moved 3 hours away with her mom to be closer to some family. I kept seeing her around town a lot, so I'm beyond grateful she's gone now. She would attempt to have conversations with me sometimes in the first month after she gave birth, but that soon stopped. As for Brian, we text occasionally, and we did go out for that beer. He overall seems happy to be a father, but we don't talk about Sarah. I don't keep up much with him anyways. We're both hardworking men with jobs, kids, and lives to live, so it's kind of hard to keep up. I don't think they're together at all, but who knows. Speaking of kids, the woman who was a single mom that I started seeing, we're still together. Her kid is awesome, and I love being her stepdad, to be honest. So, a big forget you to those who told me to stop talking to her or that it wasn't going to work out. It may seem like we moved fast, but at this point, I don't care. I've never loved anyone more. We communicate properly, hardly fight, just so much fun. I initially was going to cut all contact with her after falling off into a bad drinking habit, but she really kept me grounded. I didn't meet my stepdaughter for a while, but when I did, I knew I couldn't leave. Being a part of this little family has healed me in ways I literally can't fathom. And before anyone says I just use them to deal with the issue of not having my own kid, that couldn't be further from the truth. I'm in therapy. I got my crap together, and most days I don't even think about my ex. I even forgot about this darn account. Words cannot describe how much my life has picked up now. Thank you, Reddit strangers, for being there in my darkest time in my life. Honestly, it helped. Hoping to propose to my girlfriend sometime in the future. Son has a peanut allergy. School continues to give him or allow him to get peanuts. This has been an ongoing issue since the second day of school, where he was given peanut butter crackers. We sort of brushed it off as a new school year, new students, teachers a bit frazzled dealing with first graders, no real big deal. His allergy isn't really severe, but still not fun to deal with and could potentially become life-threatening. We had already informed the school of his allergy before the school year even started, and even talked directly to the teacher about it, because the default snack during the day, if no other parents brought in a snack, is peanut butter crackers. We even offered to purchase a special alternative for him, but they said it was unnecessary as they have other alternatives. So we figured the issue was over when a few weeks later it happened again. This time they claimed he grabbed another student's snack and ran off to eat it before they could stop him. Now, my little one can be a bit of a hardhead, and I can potentially see this happening. So again, we talked to him about peanuts and how dangerous they are to him. He continued to adamantly deny doing that and said Mrs. Teacher gave them to him. We then decide a meeting with the principal is in order, not to blame the teacher or accuse her of lying, but to hopefully get this under control. Again, a few weeks of no more issues, then it happened again. Once again, the story is, he grabbed it and ran off and ate the whole package before we caught him. Okay, so a 6-year-old managed to grab an unopened package of crackers, elude a teacher, and an aide to eat the whole package before he's caught? He's crying and swearing to us he was given them, and after so many incidents, we have to start believing him. Another meeting with the principal and teacher gets us a, "Don't worry, this won't happen again." We have another long sit down with our son to explain that even if it's given to you, ask to make sure it doesn't have peanuts or other nuts in it. Then the very next school day, the meeting was on Friday, he's given another snack of peanut butter crackers, but this time he asks if there's nuts in it, and then he's given the alternative. We figured it kinda sucks that the kid has to be the adult right here, but at the end of the day, he's learning to ask about nuts. We send an email to the principal detailing the issue and say that the next step is the school board if he's given peanuts again. We get a response back. If he's asking now, what's the problem? He should have known to ask to begin with. We are teachers, not parents. We have no issues for a while until this week. Some parent brought in peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for snack time and he was given one. He forgot to ask about nuts, but thought it was only in the crackers. We find out the parent was aware of the nut allergy in the class. It's on the parent snack sheet and brought in just a jelly one that was made separate from the peanut butter ones. He was not given this one. We spent a day at the hospital. We've had endless talks with him about nuts and do our best to teach him, but some of the blame has to be on the teachers here, right? Do schools not have an obligation to deal with allergies? The school lunch seems to have zero issues with this and has never given him a nut when there are several things on the menu rotation that contain them. He gets a special tray that was nowhere near any nuts. This is in Indiana. Any help is appreciated. Update. The past 3 months have been long and expensive, but it's finally resolved. Now I can't go into a lot of the details after, but I can go over some of the details that happened during. We contacted a few attorneys and finally found one we were comfortable with, and then the fun started. We first sat down with the principals and teacher with our attorney, and he didn't say anything except he needs to talk to someone else and not us. Our attorney then began collecting documents and statements, affidavits from our pediatrician, another doctor, and even got another opinion. Then he began having us get documents from the school, some of which they said we couldn't have, but our lawyer assured us we could have them. So he sent the school district some nice letters, and a few phone calls later, we had everything. Talking to our insurance in the hospital was the easiest part of this entire thing, which I thought would be more complicated, and our insurance even offered their attorney services to our attorney, which turned out to be quite helpful with some of the other issues that came up along the way. He spent about a month going over everything, talking to doctors, getting more statements, and reaching out to other parents, etc. During this time, our kid was moved from his normal classroom and placed in a special needs classroom, something we did not agree to or with. Our kid has no developmental problems, and an allergy is hardly a special need. So our lawyer then starts having us request more documents. Same act with the school, and he had to send off letters and phone calls to get the new stuff related to him being put into a special needs classroom. The lawyer began sending letters about how the school district is punishing our kid with the move to a more restrictive classroom and a different curriculum, and magically the next day, he's back in a normal classroom. Finally, after 3 months of mostly playing the game with the school district, getting them to give us the paperwork and requests they are legally required to, we all finally sit down with the school district's attorney and our attorney. Now, I can't go into a lot of the details, but I can tell you that they settled without us moving on to the next step of having our meetings in the courtroom. Lawyers are expensive, and so are hospital bills. I just hope all of this doesn't make our kid a target for the rest of the year. We're going to be moving and changing jobs over the summer, hopefully. Thanks for all your help and advice, guys and girls. The plans everyone brought up for us to look over were incredibly important because we already had them on file with the school. Am I the jerk for being mad that my stepdaughter will inherit our house? My husband, who's 65, and I, 47, have been married for 10 years. After my husband's retirement party, the discussion of wills and inheritance came up, and my husband informed me that he's leaving our marital home to his daughter, who's 30, in his will, which left me feeling completely blindsided and shocked. I'm aware that due to our significant age difference, I most likely will outlive my husband by many years and will probably have to spend the last decades of my life alone. So I was really upset, but also angry to learn I will most likely be kicked out of our house after my husband passes and I'm left homeless. My husband explained to me that I knew the house belonged to his late wife, who inherited it from her parents, and that I couldn't possibly expect him to not leave his house to their daughter. I replied that the house now belongs to him, and as his wife, I have a right to my marital home, and it's not fair that I will be kicked out of our home after I spend so much time and effort redecorating it and making it my own, and become homeless after his passing because I'm a housewife and I have nowhere else to go. He has an obligation to ensure my financial safety after his death. He said that it will be incredibly unfair to his daughter and his late wife if I inherit the house, and his wife would have never wanted that. His wife passed unexpectedly at a relatively young age before she got around to making a will, so my husband automatically got the house as per inheritance laws. He also explained that I'm the sole beneficiary of his life insurance, and any other savings left behind will be equally divided between me and his daughter. However, I don't think this money would be enough for me to survive the rest of my life, especially as my husband plans on having expensive cruises and holidays for the rest of his retirement. This is where, unfortunately, our argument escalated and we started yelling at each other. I told him he's doing me over after everything I've done for him, after I gave up my job and my career for him to look after our home, and that I deserved to be compensated. He retorted that he never asked me to become a housewife and it was completely my own choice, that I knew the risks and benefits and made an informed choice and he will be leaving a reasonable inheritance, and if I'm not happy with it, I should go back to work. I told him I never knew that I wouldn't get the house and that it's too late for me to return after being out of work for over 10 years, that he's a jerk for leaving me stranded like this and this is not what I agreed to, and he's mistreating me by not recognizing my contribution to our family. He laughed at me, saying I never had any kind of financial contribution as we hired cleaners and housekeepers to do most of the chores, and if anything, I was a drain by all the money I spend. Honestly, at this point, I was so enraged and in tears, and I screamed at him for being completely cruel, and I locked myself in the guest room. So, am I the jerk for wanting the house if my husband passes before me? Edit. Okay, I get it. I'm the jerk. I will apologize to my husband and try to look for a job. This time, something not so stressful and something I'll enjoy and build my own savings. I don't want to divorce my husband and take half. I honestly didn't marry him for money. I didn't even know he was wealthy until 6 months into our relationship. Honestly, when I met him, I was done with dating and so jaded with men after being cheated on quite a bit until he came along and honestly kind of swept me off my feet. He was so thoughtful, kind, and loyal, and our socio-political opinions just matched. We saw the world in a similar manner, and I never thought I would be with someone much older, but he was everything I've ever wanted. I used to work in customer service jobs, and at my last job, I was a 999 call handler. And yeah, it was really bad for my mental health, and I made minimum wage. My husband encouraged me to do something I enjoy instead, as he saw that it stressed me out. Although I did intend to find a more relaxing job, honestly, yeah, I enjoyed being at home and pursuing hobbies and doing things at my own pace. I admit it was a really comfortable life, and I let him financially take care of me and become financially dependent on him. It was way easier than the grading and the grinding. I had grown really attached to the house, which I wouldn't have done if I had known that it wouldn't be mine or that I would be kicked out of it at some point. I honestly didn't know it belonged to his late wife's parents, and I was just so shocked and blindsided. I just thought that his wife's name was on the deed as she was the main earner at that time. But yeah, I realize it's completely my fault for assuming that and that I was acting entitled. I will apologize to my husband and my stepdaughter. You're the jerk. It's not your house. He explained it to you. It was his first wife's house, and his reasoning for giving it to his daughter is sound. It was her grandparents' house, for goodness sake. It should stay in the family. Would you leave it to her when you passed? Or would she lose out on the property her mom inherited? And 47 is not too old to go back to work. I know people who changed careers at that age, so stop with your excuses. Am I the jerk for not letting my niece help at my bakery anymore? I, 35 female, own a small bakery. I'm very happy with it and proud of my work. I have 2 employees who work part-time, and for the most part it's just me. My sister-in-law approached me at the beginning of the summer and asked if I would let my niece, who's 11, help out in the bakery over the school break. She's been getting really into baking and loves watching content creators baking and apparently really wanted to shadow and help out in a bakery. I was hesitant, but I said yes, and I hated it. Every single minute that my niece spent in my bakery this summer was the only time I've ever had any regrets opening my business. Whatever the opposite of helpful was, that's what my niece was. My employees didn't enjoy her being there, and I didn't enjoy her being there at all. We were 3 very grumpy people all summer. I had hopes that she would get better, but she didn't. She started back at school last week, and I've never felt so relieved. I thought many times about telling my sister-in-law that she couldn't come back during the summer, but since I had made the promise, I kept with it. My sister-in-law stopped by the house the other day to drop something off for my husband. She told me my niece had absolutely loved her experience this summer and wanted to know if she could come back a couple Saturdays a month. I told her that unfortunately that wasn't going to work and that going forward I didn't think it was a good idea for my niece to help out. I told her it just wasn't productive for us. My sister-in-law was very unhappy. She told me that my niece had loved her summer at the bakery and was so looking forward to continuing. I told her that I was sorry, but I had a business to run and I couldn't continue having her help out. This dissolved into a shouting match that my husband eventually broke up. My sister-in-law and mother-in-law have been sending me nasty messages about breaking a girl's heart. My husband said my niece called him and was very upset, but he stands by me and understands that I can't let this bring down my workplace. So, am I being the jerk? Not the jerk. This isn't a hobby and it's not a daycare. It's your business, your livelihood. I don't know what niece did to be so bothersome, but in the end, it's your choice, and you need to make a choice that works for your business. I was fired early in my career by a team of 2 senior people I reported to. Revenge came in time. When I was in my early 20s trying to make it in the world and just starting out, I reported to a senior sales team as a junior salesperson. Really, it was a support role, and I knew my place. I watched, I stayed quiet, I learned and helped them. I reported to a lady who was mid-level and the senior guy who was head of sales. I was green, and while I was seeking mentorship and periodically asking for advice to improve how I was able to support them, they mistook it for incompetence. It was simple things like learning what format each of them preferred their daily reports in and tasks they had to do. I also had an issue because the senior guy basically stole my first bonus at the 3-month mark. It was a tiny amount to him, but a lot for young me. I didn't officially complain, but asked him about how he was able to keep my bonus when it was obvious it tracked back to my efforts on the data. He didn't like that and didn't pay me. I was doing a good job. I'm fully aware of my skills, but with the explanation, "It's just not working out," they fired me a few weeks later. I spent a couple months getting a new job, which turned out to be an amazing smaller firm where I was appreciated, mentored correctly, and thrived. The new firm was very successful. About 2 years later, after I'd become a vital but still junior part of the smaller company, my former firm closed up in the region and put everyone out of work. So I saw through the glass while walking by the boardroom one day that the senior guy who stole my bonus was being interviewed for a job at my current firm. My current supervisors didn't see me walk by, but my old boss and I made eye contact. Now, in a small sales team at a small firm, it's important to have a nice working relationship and trust. It's also a lot of selfish salespeople who are there to make money and don't like being ripped off. So later that afternoon, I quietly mentioned to the boss, "I saw X in the office today when I walked by. I used to work for him, and that jerk stole my bonus one time." It was all I needed to say, because the last thing my current boss needed was a person who'd do that on our team. Then times got tough, and I know that man spent 2 years looking for work. 6 or 7 years later, I was at a new company in a more senior role, and the one lady who I originally reported to called me and was selling at a new firm, and she was calling to ask if I'd be interested in purchasing from her. I didn't know she had started working there. The firm she was with was selling something that was very basic and interchangeable to competing firms. She had gone from selling important things to selling a nothing product after the original firm closed. She acted all happy and nice to me and recalled the great job I did when we worked together. I also knew she didn't want to be talking to me, but her call log said that she had to call. I told her thanks and sent me along an official quote and proposal, several hours of work for her. In the industry we were in, she was paid not only on new sales, but a net sales measure, meaning she had to retain clients as well as bring in new ones. I had a lot of commitment at the firm she was now at. While she spent her afternoon drafting a proposal, I spent a couple hours pulling all my business from that company and subbing it for a competitor up the street. She emailed me a full proposal and mentioned she was excited to be working with me again and supporting my business. She had no idea yet I just pulled everything, and she would never receive a bonus this year because of the size of the amount that I pulled. The next day, she emailed me quite upset and had CC'd her boss, who I've known for years and had a good working relationship with. I replied to all and thanked her and said I decided to go with a competitor because it just won't work out, as I find your approach to business dealings to be insincere. Her boss emailed me back directly and asked what happened, and I replied that I just don't think she's a sincere person. My business to their firm was worth more than her job, and she didn't last more than a month there after that. I thought this was petty through the first part, but wow, you torpedoed that woman's career. I guess the lesson learned is to treat people nicely regardless of age or experience, because they could eventually be in a position to destroy you just for fun. You sure it's mine? Fine, I'll keep it. This happened in 2014. I had just lost my job and was in the process of looking for a new one, but didn't have much money saved to pay bills in the meantime. So I asked my father if I could borrow $1,200 just to get me through the next month, and I would pay him back as soon as I started working again. He sent the money, I paid my bills, and I got a new job shortly after. As soon as I had the money to pay him back, I used my bank's online bill pay option to send him a check. I sent him a text and told him it was on the way and just assumed that would be the end of it. Well, a week went by and he hadn't gotten it. I thought maybe it took a few days for the bank to actually process the bill pay option because I hadn't used it before, so I asked him to just wait a few more days and see if it came through. Several days later, it still hadn't gotten there, so I called the bank and asked them, and they told me I could stop payment on it for free, so I did. Then I just wrote a personal check and mailed it. I just assumed something went wrong with the online bill pay. About 2 months later, I got a check in the mail from a medical facility in the state my father lives in for $1,200. I called and asked them about it, and they told me on a recorded line that it was an overpayment on an account my father had with them, and it was a legitimate check and was mine to keep. At that point, I didn't associate it with the bill pay thing. I did call my father to ask about his accounts with this place because there was no reason they should have my address to be sending me an overpayment if he had already made one. He had no idea what was going on because he hadn't used that facility in a few years. I looked up the place on Google, and finally it dawned on me what had happened. My father's address was on Saddlewood Drive at that point in time, but when I typed it into bill pay, my phone autocorrected it to Sandalwood, and it just so happened to be the same numerical address. And because my father's name was listed as the payee, they erroneously attempted to apply it to his account. So that's where my check had gone. I tried to call them again and explain what happened, and the lady on the phone was extremely rude to me. She told me, "I've already talked to you about this. I don't know why you're calling again. We sent you what we owed you. This account is settled, and we will not be talking about it again." Again, this is a recorded line. I asked if she was sure they owed me this money. She practically shouted, "Yes!" and I just smiled and hung up the phone. I deposited the check into my account that day. They didn't try to call me back until about 6 weeks later. I'd been wondering how long it would take. The person who called me was a different lady, and she called to tell me that a mistake had been made and that I owed them $1,200. I told her she was misinformed and she should go back and listen to the recorded calls that I had made to their office, and gave her the dates. I had been reassured multiple times that the money was mine and that I was in the clear to cash that check, and then I hung up. I haven't heard a single thing about it since then. Am I the jerk for not paying for our son's college tuition after he blew his money when he was 18, despite being able to afford it? So at 18, we gave our son his college fund, told him he can do as he pleases with it. He chose to spend it traveling and finding himself over the last 2 years. He's now 20 and wishes to go to school and asked us to pay for his tuition. When I asked what happened to the money, he told us the above. I said no and told him if he wants to go to school, he better get a job. My wife wants to pay it for his future. I said no, we did right, and he chose otherwise. Am I the jerk? Edit. We did inform him that the money was his to use, be it for college or whatever. It was his money after all. We set it aside for him. We did explain the intent, but he's an adult and he was free to use it as he pleases. Just understand the consequences. Edit. 18 is an adult in my eyes and old enough to understand actions have consequences. We informed him what the intent was for and that we would not police him over it. It was his money and he was free to use it as he pleased. Sorry if I didn't explain this properly beforehand. Edit. My son knows what I do for a living. That said, what I did was exactly what my dad did. I also did not use it to go to school. I used it as a down payment on 2 houses and rented them out, and asked him for help. My son was free to do the same. He may not have the knowledge or impulse control, but he is old enough to know that it's okay to ask for help if he's unsure how to use said money or had no idea what to do with his life. I'm not a monster and he knows this. He could have just asked, "Hey, I want to travel. How can I best go about that?" Had he asked, I would have said, "Let's do X, Y, and Z with your money." Then I would have given him more money to travel. We did the same with his car. He wanted a car and we told him to save. When he saved up an amount needed to buy a car, I told him to keep it and we bought him a car. He knows I do not think solely to be a cruel monster. He had a bunch of options and he chose the worst one. But I was not going to forcefully interject my views on him if he did not want to come to me and ask for help. The fact he did not meant to me that he did not want my guidance. Not the jerk. But seriously, did you expect an 18-year-old to make good choices with that kind of money? Yes. 18 is old enough to make responsible choices. Otherwise, we wouldn't let them drive or work. Not the jerk. He spent the college fund. It's not a magic well of money that replenishes itself. That being said, did no one bring this up with him over the 2 years he spent the money? Did he not mention it? Seems like a communication gap. Today I messed up by sending my wife to check if a Powerball ticket was a winner. So this happened a few days ago. I have a long-standing habit of buying a lottery ticket for the Powerball or Megaball, etc. whenever it gets over 300 million. It's overall a very small amount per year, and it's just a small investment in fun times from my point of view. Recently, the prize was slowly creeping up due to no winners multiple weeks in a row. The prize gets rolled over if there's no winner. It was over $1 billion last week, and I bought a ticket like usual. But I got too busy to take it in to check the numbers. Here's where I messed up. I decided to give the ticket to my wife to check. Now, she's a sweet lady who's not used to this kind of stuff, so she wasn't familiar with the process. I sent her to a local supermarket with a machine, explained how to scan the card, and sent her on her merry way. A little while later, I get a strange text basically saying, "You better be sitting down," and then a text saying something to the effect of, "I'm never coming back to this store again." Later, I got the full story. She scanned the ticket correctly, and the machine announced that she was a winner. A full-screen graphic in giant words, the works. She freaked out at the prospect of becoming billionaires. She does not know how much is shaved off for taxes, but that's a different story. Attracting attention in the store. After hyperventilating for a minute or two, she saw that the machine stated to proceed to a checkout counter. She walks over and found out that she won $2. She was not aware that if you get one number, or sum, in the right place, you can win your money back. Anyways, after landing back on Earth abruptly, she left the store mortified at her reaction to winning $2, and now we need to find someplace else to shop. Most people will never know what it feels like to be a billionaire, but she did. Karen demands my husband's parking spot permanently. Not gonna happen, lady. Our car was stolen in June and then returned to us at the end of July. It's being worked on, and my husband has had to tell our neighbor's mother, who visits, that she can no longer park in our parking spot. All well and good until today when I'm coming home from some errands. The lady is on our stoop asking for my husband and if there's any way that he can extend her parking allowance in our spot. She explains she's moving into the townhouse next to us to help care for her grandkids, and she sees that our car is a lost cause. She has said that us losing our car was great. Now she can park closer to the townhouse and not have to park on the street. What I told her and what my roommate/landlord has told her is this. The car is being returned and instated in October, and you have until then to make arrangements. This woman, who I'm assuming has no sense of reality, said the chances of our car ever working is nigh, and that we should just give her the parking spot. Our townhouses have assigned parking and guest parking spots are adjacent. I told her she'll have to wait until my husband gets home and talk to him. She literally said she won't talk to him and will just take the spot whenever she wants, regardless of if we get our car working or not. The car is currently at my husband's father's being worked on. I know it seems petty, but I'm considering calling a tow truck the next time she does this. Update. Neighbor, who is the son of the woman, has gotten involved and he sides with us on the matter. He also has told his mother to park in the guest parking spots from now on or don't even come over at all. She also lied to me about moving in. Big surprise there. So far, I was given a blessing if she does it again to call a tow truck. We did have someone park in our spot, but he asked if it was okay. He was part of a home inspection because one of our neighbors is selling his townhouse and was only there for 30 minutes. Save the tow company number in your phone. She'll get the hint the first time that her wish.com attempt at bullying you won't work. Not petty at all. People like your neighbor won't respond to calm, logical reasoning. She just gave you a heads up that she will take the parking spot and you can lump it. You can waste time and energy and breath trying to reason with her, but in the end, you'll be at the same point. You'll need to tow her car to get the point across. She's a bully and she's gonna bully you if you let her. This must be a tactic that often works for her. I broke up with my boyfriend on his birthday for catfishing someone when he was younger. I, 26 female at the time, had just started dating Thomas, 28 male, and things seemed promising. Very sweet man, educated, and quite smart, good looks. After 7 weeks of dating, he invited me and 2 of his childhood friends, let's call them Alex and Bart, for a long 29th birthday celebration weekend at his father's country house in a small French town. His father was going to be around as well, and I was very excited to meet everyone. Day 1, Friday, is fun. I'm happy to get along well with Thomas' father, a smart and caring man. Day 2, Saturday. After a very nice day, we enjoy a party in the garden with the neighbors, including some friends of Thomas. After a few hours and lots of drinks, a group of people gather around a small campfire and start sharing childhood memories. This is where things go wrong. At first, of course, innocent and dumb stories as you would expect. But then, Thomas and his friends started sharing really sick stuff. In particular, they told a story about how, when they were 14 or 15, they found very amusing to bully for almost 6 months Arthur, a boy of their school who was very isolated and shy, making jokes, calling him names, you name it. As if this was not enough, they created a fake girl profile on MSN Messenger, a computer platform to exchange live messages that we used back in the 2000s, and they spent months exchanging messages with them under the false girl identity, flirting and developing a false relationship with them. Some people were in on this at school, and it became a big and cruel joke behind Arthur's back. They used pictures of Bart's real cousin, and the boy truly thought he had some kind of online girlfriend to whom he even sent confessions and love messages. At some point, they got bored and scheduled a false rendezvous in real life, asking the boy to take a bus for 2 or 3 hours, wearing a t-shirt of Elmer and the elephant, based on a private joke. Obviously, there was no one waiting for him, and they did not know how long he waited over there, all by himself. If Arthur had not already understood what was going on, he found out the next day at school after Thomas and Bart told the story to everyone and even shared the love messages that Arthur had been writing. The poor guy stopped coming to class and apparently changed schools, and it's easy to imagine that this must have really taken a toll on him. Do you think that Thomas, Alex, and Bart had a bit of shame about it? Not a bit of remorse, in particular on Thomas and Bart's side. They kept making jokes about it and even seemed to regret that they didn't take it further. To say that I felt uncomfortable would be a gross understatement. I was absolutely horrified and started to despise Thomas more than anything. I was not the only one who was shocked. Thomas' father, who heard the end of the story, had the most disappointed look in his eyes. His stupid son was so drunk that he didn't even notice it. I escaped the party immediately after that and got back to the house. I couldn't sleep at all this night, and I kept thinking about the evening and how Thomas was still finding this funny. I heard him come to bed around 4 a.m., but I pretended I was already asleep. Day 3, Sunday, was the actual birthday, and the initial plan was that I would make Thomas a one-on-one fancy surprise date for lunch nearby, and we would meet the group for a late afternoon party. But instead, I woke up very early on Sunday morning, took all of my stuff in silence, and went alone to the train station where I took a direct train heading back to Paris. I decided to send a text to Thomas wishing him a happy birthday and telling him to meet me at a certain location 1 hour from the house for a surprise, and that I needed to go a little bit in advance to make sure everything would be perfect. I had picked the location randomly using Google Maps to gain time. Thomas read the text around 10 a.m. when he woke up. He responded with excitement that he would follow religiously the instructions. When he arrived there at 12:30, I told him to wait further as there was a little delay on something. Then I asked him to meet me at a restaurant, which was a 30-minute drive from the initial location. When he arrived at 1:15, I texted him that I was on my way, would arrive in 20 minutes, and that he'll understand when he sees me why I made him wait. I also asked him to order some food and the most expensive bottle on the menu. Around 1:30, he started calling me several times and sent me a lot of worried texts, and after 45 minutes, I responded, in French, "So, how does it feel to have people play with your feelings?" Then I stopped responding. I let him call and text the entire afternoon, but I never responded. At some point, an unknown number called me. It was his friend Alex asking what was going on and that Thomas' birthday was completely ruined because of what I did. I just responded, "This is an extremely small payback for what you did to Arthur. Tell Thomas to stop calling me," and I hung up. I blocked them all. I still felt bad the entire evening as I had started to grow attached to Thomas back then. The following days, a common friend called me to say that my reaction was completely absurd and unfair, that it was not my role to punish someone for actions they did back when they were a teenager, that there were adult ways of saying things, and that I had been completely crazy. Only a few people supported what I did. Everyone else seemed to think that I was a jerk. Thomas tried to fix things and win me back for a few months afterwards. I never responded to any of his messages. I don't regret it. I simply hope that Arthur, who should be about 35 or 36 by now, is well. Edit. About Thomas' father, he was actually one of the few people understanding my actions. He called me shortly after the incident to discuss an unrelated topic. I was to give him a list of recommendations about something, and was already aware of everything. He didn't badmouth his son, but I could really feel that he was disappointed. He simply told me that he had not found sleep the night of Saturday to Sunday because of what he had heard during the party. He told me that he appreciated meeting me and expressed regret that I was not with his son anymore, but also said that he understood my reasons. He did not try to convince me to get back with Thomas. This man was truly a gentleman. I don't know what became of Arthur. I don't even know his last name. I think that even if I did know his name, I wouldn't have reached out to him by fear of making him remember things that he probably wants to forget. I hope he's a confident man now, and that he still likes Elmer the elephant. Good for you. It's usually not right to hold someone accountable for dumb things they did as a teenager, as some of your acquaintances have asserted. The thing is, you're not holding him accountable for that. You're holding him accountable for thinking that his behavior was acceptable well after he became an adult. He didn't feel remorse about it at all, and wasn't telling the story about some stupid thing he did as a teen but would never do again and wished he hadn't done it. He was proud of it. Holding him accountable for that, for being who he was during that birthday party, was entirely acceptable, and you did a wonderful job of it. My husband refuses to give up his gym girlfriend or even talk about the issue. On Father's Day, I noticed my husband texting and smiling with someone, ignoring or not seeing me when I invited him to the table for breakfast. I got closer so he could notice me, and I saw that he was texting an unknown woman. We've been married for 4 years, and we have a preschooler and a 1-year-old together. I didn't bring it up besides asking, "Who's that?" since my mom was in town visiting. When I mentioned it later, I said I didn't know making friends of the opposite gender and not saying anything about it was okay for us. He didn't volunteer anything, but when pressed further, mentioned that he had been working out with her, which I know is 3 to 4 days a week for 2 to 3 hours before work most mornings. He ended up admitting that he didn't tell me about her because he knew I'd get mad. Moreover, that he'll be working out with whoever he wants to. Fast forward several one-sided, vulnerable conversations, and 2 months after a lot of feeling sick to my stomach and sleepless nights, I finally laid it out. I didn't give him an ultimatum. I simply told him I can't sleep, that I feel heartbroken and constantly concerned, that if I was doing the same thing, he'd feel awful, and crickets. I asked how long it was going to last and was met with, "There's no sign-up sheet in the gym." I told him I can't imagine continuing our relationship feeling like this and needed to know in words how he felt. He reported feeling the same, that I'm his wife and he loves me. My boundary is acknowledged and so far unenforced. It's not that I think that he's cheating on me, yet. It's that he won't budge or say anything, knowing that I'm hurting. I feel like I'm getting more heartbroken daily. The impulse to check his phone is hard to resist at times. I don't want to leave, but I need more than this lack of response from him. Update. When he left for work this morning, a day later, I told him to think about what I said throughout the week. I appreciate the support, including the comments that bring up I may be jealous or have let my body go, or especially that I have been too permissive as a wife. I'm completely open to criticism in my personal arena. Update 2. At no point have I asked him to stop going to the gym or working out with her. I told him I wouldn't ask that he's free to do what he likes, but that he should think of something he's comfortable with to address the issue and rebuild trust. I suggested having her over for dinner. You can guess how that went. He said nothing. FYI, he's bodybuilding and commuting 40 minutes to get to this gym by work, 30 miles away. He leaves at 4 in the morning to go to the gym, so confrontation is not a possibility. I can't get childcare at that time, nor do I have a friend that can follow him all the way out there at that hour, unless I have a volunteer. So many of you are absolutely right. The lack of response to me is the problem, independent of this other woman. I don't have family to run to besides his mom. If you tell your partner that something hurts you and they keep doing it, it's no longer unintentional. Sorry, OP, your husband is a fool. You have a right to feel the way you do. He's taking advantage of your marriage and especially you. His response to your feelings is not the way a loving husband would react. He says he loves you, but his actions say otherwise. Plus, he answered the text right in front of you on Mother's Day with your mom there. How disrespectful of him. You deserve better. Good luck. I was a gym goer for many years, and I always chatted with everyone, just my nature. I always worked out alone, my preference. It's not the fact that he has a female workout partner, it's the fact he didn't let you know, and it appears he doesn't even care you're upset by it. The fact he's texting her just to chit-chat isn't right, especially him knowing how you feel. The only text should be if one of them has to cancel. Sorry, but you sound way jealous, controlling, and manipulative. We need to stop normalizing controlling who our partners are friends with. My wife has tons of guy friends that she spends time with, and I never question her about any of them. Because I trust her, and I know that she loves me and would never do anything to hurt me. Are some of them attractive? Sure. But I know when she goes out with them to, say, a bar or a club, it's just as it's just as friends. And if they were to ever try something on her, she would shut it down quickly. Learn to trust your husband and stop trying to control who he spends time with like it's the 50s. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her husband? Please let us know. That last commenter though. Am I the jerk for retiring and moving to South America like everybody knew that I planned to since I was 16? I, male 55, just pulled the pin on my retirement. I put in 33 years of work and I'm done. I bought property in South America 12 years ago and I've been building our retirement home down there. I have dual citizenship, so I can own property without it being a hassle. The house was designed to be perfect for us. We have a pool, a small house for the caretaker and hardener, and 34 different fruit trees. The bathroom is up to North American standards, and the shower has grab bars and stuff already built in for when I'm old. Everything is on one level, so there are no stairs. My wife helped by making suggestions to the design of the house and by taking care of decorating it. We've been vacationing there for 8 years now and renting it out when we aren't there for some extra money. We've hosted friends and family there, both with us there and on their own. My wife has now decided that she doesn't want to live there for 7 months of the year. We have grandkids now, and she wants to be more involved in their lives. I love my kids and my grandkids, and my parents who also live up here, but I'm done with winter. If I never see snow again, it will be too soon. The house has guest rooms and flights are cheap. If they want to see me in the winter, they're welcome to come down. Plus, I'll be back for 5 months in the summer to do some contract work. I'll see everyone then. My wife said she didn't want to go down this winter and that it's absolutely her right. I booked my flight for September and she asked me about the expense on the credit card. I said I was leaving for the winter like I had told everyone I planned to do. That is when she said that she didn't want to go this winter actually meant she didn't want us to go this winter. I said that I was going and that I would see her in the spring unless she changed her mind and came down. Now her, my parents, and my kids are bugging me about leaving her alone for the winter. It's 100% her choice. Not the jerk. This is going to be a problem for the rest of your life. She has grandbabies, and many grandparents don't want to miss out on the growth and fun of grandbabies. You don't even want to come back for the holidays? That may be a jerk move, and for sure your wife would want to be around for the holidays. September is very early to be a snowbird. Where are you from that winter starts that early? Things change, dude. 35 years ago, I bet you didn't think grandkids would anchor your wife, but here you are. My mom had planned a big move to Tennessee from Illinois, bought a house, cars, moved all this stuff ready to move in, until my daughter was born. Now she's selling the house in Tennessee as she can't imagine living without being involved in her life. Wifey changed with grandkids. Sucks it's this late, but it seems you're unwavering in your conviction with your plan, which you have every right to do and even communicated to her about it. Not the jerk, but I'm pretty sure your wife's values have changed and she didn't really communicate that to you very well. Hopefully snowbirding won't crash your relationship. Best of luck. How a local doctor got the best malicious compliance against my boss. Somewhere around 2007, I was working as a drugstore manager, running the entire front store and the pharmacy. Pay was excellent for someone who was in their early to mid-20s, but the job was also soul-crushing in some stupid ways. A rule came down that cashiers can no longer have drinks at the register. They can drink on their lunch breaks and otherwise shouldn't need water. At the same time, they dialed back the AC, so the store was constantly uncomfortably warm, but not technically dangerous. I had some of the best staff. One lady was roughly 65 and came to me to let me know she was on medicine that gave her dry mouth, so she needed me to know if I took her water away, she would really have a hard time being able to talk to customers. She almost developed a lisp when she couldn't have her water. I told her no worries, have your water. I'll deal with my boss when he sees you someday. Because he was running 40 stores, and mine was generally not a problem store, he only came by every 60 days or so. Eventually, he does swing in and asks her about her water. She says she has a medical condition, and I told her it was fine. I also told him I had approved the water. He pulls me into the office to let me know that for her to have that water, she needs a doctor's note. If he sees her with it again without a note, we both get written warnings. He explains that is because not following the company rule can't be a decision made by me. I'm flabbergasted. I'm just the manager in charge of the store. This company literally made me do drills on how to deal with horrible, dangerous things, but I can't even approve a bottle of water? It must be an exception deemed necessary for medical needs. I explain this is stupid. He actually agrees, but says that he's also following orders from above. Great. I pull my cashier aside and I tell her what's up. I said I'm really sorry, but can she please get her doctor to fax a stupid note over so we can cover ourselves? She got a little gleam in her eye, and I was excited to see what it meant. Her next shift, she rolls in and says, "You're gonna love this." She hands me about 100 copies of a letter that says something along the lines of, "I do solemnly state that cashier is medically a human being and requires water on regular intervals while working and not solely during breaks. This was a massive waste of my time, and your company should be ashamed of yourself. I will be recommending your competitor as much as humanly possible to my patients who fill prescriptions in this town for the rest of my natural life. Doctor." The next 40 were identical letters, each with a different staff member listed, as my genius cashier had snagged an old schedule with first names and last initials. The rest had a blank space for me to fill in new hire names so our staff could all have drinks on the sales floor. My boss wasn't even mad. None of the higher-ups above him ever mentioned it on a store walk, so I assume I was covered in a meeting of people higher up than me. My daughter chose her stepdad to walk her down the aisle. I, 46 male, have one daughter who's 26, whose mom ran off when she was 7 and came back when she was 15 claiming she wanted a relationship. She gave it a chance and apparently got really close to her new stepdad. Apparently, he's a really cool guy and likes similar things to her, like hockey, and he also plays guitar like my daughter. I initially thought that it was great she was bonding with her stepdad and her mom. She's getting married to her fiancé who's 30. She's been dating him for 4 years now. I pitched in for the wedding, as did her mom, upwards of $25,000. The day is fast approaching, and she told me that she's chosen her stepdad to walk her down the aisle, as they've really bonded over the past 11 years. I didn't say anything at the time, but I've already decided that I will not be going, as I won't be disrespected like this. If she wants to be a happy family with her mom who abandoned her for 8 years, go for it, but count me out. It wasn't either of them who went to all her hockey games. It wasn't them who paid for her tutoring for exams. It wasn't them who went through the financial hardship of working 3 jobs until she was 17 to support us. And it wasn't them who was there when she got her milestones. It was me. I won't be telling her I'm not coming. I just won't show. I can only assume it's because stepdad got to be the fun dad. He didn't have any real responsibility. She'll figure it out when she really needs help, and mom and stepdad have that confused look on their faces. At 26, she should be old enough to not just be picking the fun dad. Why can't both dads walk her down the aisle? Who says things have to be traditional? OP. I ain't walking with that man. I've literally never spoken to him, and she said she wants him. She never said she wants both of us. Update. So I took your guys' advice and I spoke with my daughter and decided before that even if she didn't change her mind, I wouldn't miss her wedding or cut her off. I spoke to her and let her know that this choice has hurt me and that if she still wants her stepdad to walk her down the aisle, that's her choice, but I won't support her, but will be there to support her. She said she still wants me there, but that her mom has apparently said she wants stepdad to walk her down the aisle as a way of accepting him into the family. She said if she refuses, she won't be coming, and neither will stepdad, and she will never speak to them again. I asked if she really wants them in her life, setting demands to maintain a relationship, and you'll never guess who I got a furious call from. Her mother. She was saying I manipulated her into saying she never wants to see them again and uninvited them. I will be, in 3 months' time, walking my daughter down the aisle. Am I the jerk for wanting to move out over lemonade? I, 22 female, moved back home to live with my parents 2 years ago. My family has always been very close, and my parents actually initiated my moving in so I could focus on building my savings. Everything's been great. The house is huge, so no one's living on top of each other, and my mom has been ecstatic over all her kids being home. I take care of my space as well as shared spaces, doing chores, etc. They've refused any rent or grocery money I've ever offered, insisting I save most of the money I make. My mom grocery shops for the house and always asks each family member what they need from the store for the week. I always ask for a 12-pack of canned lemonade. They're my weak spot. I have 1 or 2 a day. My mom has never really had a problem getting them for me before. Recently though, she's been resistant. Thinking it was about the money, I offered to give her the $5, and when that didn't help, I just started getting it myself, but she still glares at me when I drink it. I kept asking what the issue is, but she just walks away, and next time I see her, she changed the subject entirely. Things came to a head yesterday when I came home from work with some of my personal groceries, including lemonade. My mom lost it, crying and carrying on about how I don't care about how anyone else feels. I'm at a complete loss, trying to calm her down, when she tells me if I'm going to continue with these habits, I won't do it under her roof. Hearing that, I admit I did snap a little. I was hurt that she would threaten to kick me out for any reason, considering how close we've always been, but especially since I don't think I've done anything even remotely wrong. We got in a huge back and forth, mainly with me demanding she tell me what's so wrong with me drinking some darn lemonade, and her sneering at me saying, "You know." I eventually stormed off to my room, feeling torn. My brother came in shortly after to talk. He says he understands completely where I'm coming from, but is suggesting I do what she's asking me to, and just stop drinking the lemonade. I absolutely could, but at this point, it's sort of the principle. I know I'm living with my parents, but I'm an adult and feel I should be allowed to drink my preferred beverage whenever I please, especially if I'm now paying for it and going out to purchase it myself. It's just lemonade, but it goes both ways. My mom shouldn't care about it either because it's just lemonade. If she's insisting I stop drinking it or else I'm getting kicked out, I kinda wanna take the initiative and just leave. I have plenty saved at this point. I feel bad because she's my mom. She's been so good to me and has given me the chance to gather the savings I now have. I also feel bad for yelling at her. Me getting worked up didn't help the situation. Am I the jerk for how I acted, or would I be the jerk if I left over this? Update. I asked my mom if we could sit down tonight and have a calm conversation about what happened. My dad wasn't home, but I asked my brother to be there too, as sort of a mediator. It was a long, emotional, draining talk, and there isn't a whole lot of resolution, but it was very enlightening finally. I expressed to her that I'm mostly concerned for her since her reaction to something seemingly so small has been increasingly intense, and it's starting to affect our relationship. I expressed that I felt confused and sought clarity, and that I felt hurt by her threats to kick me out in general because that's not the kind of relationship we have. I told her I truly don't know what was up with the lemonade and practically begged her to open up. She started getting teary, but was mostly calm. Here's her side. Apparently, in May, when this all started, she watched a documentary. They're kind of her thing, and she watches a variety of genres. This particular documentary was about eating disorders. It discussed the culture and history behind it, the influence of social media, and the warning signs. My mom happened to see a lot of the warning signs in me and my behaviors. I'm going to clarify here that I do not and have never struggled with an eating disorder of any kind. Some of the behaviors are as follows. She rarely sees me eat, I'm relatively skinny, I wear layers most of the time, I have an Apple Watch, and of course I drink low-calorie drinks, namely zero-sugar lemonade, which I didn't think to mention in the original post because I honestly didn't even think it would be relevant in any way. So basically, she's been anxious this entire time that I'm withering away. And every time she's alluded or asked or demanded I stop drinking my diet lemonade and I continue drinking it anyway, I'm being selfish, flaunting my disordered behaviors and proving to her that I am in fact sick. That was a lot to take in. I genuinely didn't think it would be that. Never once occurred to me. I defended myself for every point she made, which I will make again here. I work at a restaurant nearly every day, usually afternoon into the night, so I'm rarely home for dinner or lunch. I get free food at my job, and pretty much every server there eats at least one of their meals during break, myself included. By the time I get home, I'll have a snack or something before bed since it's late, and in the morning I sometimes have breakfast at home, but a lot of times I'm not hungry in the AM, so I just do my thing until I leave, usually around noon, and I pick up food with friends or alone on my own. I know it's not the healthiest of habits, nor is it the healthiest foods, but I'm definitely not starving myself or counting calories. But in my worrywart mother's eyes, she hardly ever actually sees me eat. When she does see me eat, I also don't eat large portions, but I don't think that's odd since I'm not a large person. I'm 5 feet tall and around 110 pounds. I wear layers because it's the fashion that I like, sort of vintage 70s grungy look. I have an Apple Watch for the same reason I assume most people do, which is, why not? It's my dad's old one. Also, it's helpful for when I'm at work since I can't carry my phone around. I'm not tracking my steps or anything. And lastly, I honestly, genuinely, truly just like zero sugar lemonade. Has nothing to do with the calories or health reasons, I just like it. I used to drink regular until they were out of stock one day, so I got zero sugar and found I liked it better because it wasn't as thick or syrupy. That's it. She cried, I cried, she apologized, and so did I. I'm not really sure where we go from here, since I can tell she doesn't fully believe me. I'm going to make more of an effort to eat my meals at home, but I'm not going to pig out in front of her just to appease a generally unfounded worry she developed from watching a movie. I might also cut back on the lemonades since they're clearly a trigger for her, and I need to drink more water anyway. Other than that, I don't think I did anything wrong to now need to change my behaviors in an extreme way. I told her, and my brother seconded this, that she needs to stop holding this stuff in and just talk to people, because otherwise it creates misunderstandings like this, and I honestly did feel very hurt by the things she said during our fight, and also with how weirdly distant she's been treating me since all this happened. My brother added that if she had been right about what was going on with me, the way she went about it wasn't helpful at all and likely would have made it worse. She explained she didn't ever really intend to kick me out, even if I was sick. She just wanted to shock me into admitting I needed help or something. My mom is demanding I love my stepsister even though she's a brat. My mom married her husband when I was 12. He had a 2-year-old daughter at the time who had no mom, so my mom fell madly for her as well and considers this her kid too. I never had anything against her back then, but I won't pretend I started caring about her all that much either, or that I saw her as my sister. My mom and her husband spoil her rotten and have allowed her to become a very demanding kid. She will tell people what to do and will scream if you don't follow what she wants. This started when she was like 4 and has gotten worse in the last 4 years. She will demand someone play tea parties with her, and if they say no, screams at the top of her lungs at you. She tells you to put something on TV, and if you don't, same response with the screaming. Wants a piggyback ride and is told no, screaming also loud. At the park and wants to be the only one on the slide, screams. She's had several notes sent home from school with complaints about this. My mom and her husband even got called in at the end of this past school year to talk about how they feel she needs to mature and have this behavior nipped in the bud. I find her so annoying that I do my best to avoid her now, which is easier since I moved out. Not too long ago, my mom was asking if I would be coming home on weekends when my training starts, and I told her I probably wouldn't. She asked why, and I said because I was busy. She suggested they could come here and stay with me for a weekend. I told her not to. She asked me why. I told her I didn't want her stepdaughter in my apartment. She told me she's my little sister and misses me, and I should spend some time with her. I said nah and pointed out her behavior. She told me how wrong it was to feel that way about her, and I said I'm not the only one, and I won't be. I told her the difference is she and her husband love her, but not everyone will, and then her behavior will just keep getting doors shut in her face. As it is, she had several birthday party invites rescinded from January to May this year. My mom told me saying I don't love her is awful and that I've known her for most of her life, and she has adored me since day one. She said she was ashamed of how cold I could be to the kid. I don't think she really gets it, but maybe she's right. Am I the jerk? You are not the jerk. Your mom and stepdad are being really short-sighted. No one is going to want to be around your stepsister, and it's all their fault. Yup. Stepsister's behavior is obviously horrible, but OP's mom and stepdad are the real jerks here. Not the jerk. I don't understand how people think others are horrible for genuinely not wanting to be around poorly behaved kids, or kids at all. They're raising a brat, plain and simple. If my math's right and I didn't miss something, she should be 8. By now, she should be able to accept no as an answer. If it continues, she's going to have a heck of a time in the next few years. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk for the way they said this or not? Please let us know. Not at all. No one likes screaming brats. Hit, run, return, refund. I work at a fast food joint. For context, our store has 2 windows, one for collecting and the other is to hand out food. They also have 2 bright yellow poles on either side, so it's not hard to miss. At least I didn't think so. The past week or so, I've had an increase on people driving past this window and to the food one. This causes issues, especially in rushes, but yesterday it caused an issue I had yet to experience. I wasn't working drive-thru, but I had a clear line of sight of the second window. I was slicing tomatoes when I hear a loud honk. I immediately drop my tomatoes and look at the window. Normally, if a customer honks, they're mad. Someone forgot something or their food was made wrong. As the manager, I have to go play peacekeeper. I make eye contact with the woman sitting there who has a deer in the headlights look, and she peels away. Definitely confused. Someone doesn't honk for no reason, and I know my crew hadn't talked to her since I'd been the closest staff member anyway. I dip into the front. I'm trying to find someone to tell me what happened. All 3 of my front people are crowded around the first window. I look at them and say, what happened with that lady? As if they were waiting to present to me this glorious scene, they all immediately scuttle behind me. A hilarious sight, as I'm the smallest person on staff. I don't need an explanation at this point. A truck sat in my window. The front was an absolute mess. I honestly wouldn't have trusted it to turn on myself. My crew were whispering behind me about how mad the driver was going to be. He was getting out, and I was being pushed towards him. I brace myself. He takes a second to look at it, then looks at me and chuckles. That was crazy. I relax a little bit and smile. Did she back into you? Yeah, I guess she missed the window and she didn't see me. This caused both of us to laugh. His truck is huge. It was a pickup, but lifted and definitely a bit bulkier than what I normally see. I'm not a car person, so that's the best description you'll get. Its engine was also so loud, he actually had to turn it off before he even stepped out so we could hear him talk. She was also in a little bug. There's no way she could have missed him. At this point, I switch back into manager mode. I ask him if he'd like us to speak with his insurance company. Would he like me to keep his info in case she comes back later? At least let me give you a discount. He said no to everything I offered. Honestly, I can't even tell where she hit me. This thing's had so many accidents, I only use it for work. Good thing I'm on my break. That's a relief to hear. Though he insisted on paying for all his food, I accidentally forgot his fries were smalls. Uh-oh, made that a large and they're ready in the bag. For health reasons, I can't take them back out. You enjoy. I wish this is where the story ended. Next day, I'm in the office doing manager stuff when there's a knock on my door. I look up. I've worked with my crew long enough to know when someone just met a Karen. OP, this lady up at my window. I'm already up and walking to the front. I didn't hear what the lady's issue was, but I already know it's gonna be something stupid and annoying. I look out the window and think, that woman looks familiar. Wait, I recognize that blue bug. Uh-oh. I open the window. Hey, what seems to be the issue here? I came through here yesterday. Okay. I ordered, but I never got my food. I want it now. That's strange. Do you have a receipt? No, but I paid. Side note, she definitely didn't pay. Only managers can delete orders, which I had to do when she drove away. I'm sorry, ma'am, but I can't help you without a receipt. But I already ordered my food yesterday, and I paid. I want it now. Did I mention I'd been here for about 8 hours straight at this point? The nice professional facade was starting to crack. Ma'am, if what you're saying is true, you would have gotten your food yesterday. Well, I didn't. Either give me my food or refund. I can't do that, ma'am. If you don't give me my food right now, I'll call your corporate office and have you fired. Oh no, how scary. I'm the only person they've found who's willing to get up early enough to open their store, so these threats don't even bother me. They do make me lose all respect for the customer though. I take a breath and put on my best grin. I look her in the eyes and say, please do. I'd love a reason to show them our security footage from yesterday. We had an accident happen and the guy wouldn't let me call the cops, but if corporate saw, they'd have no choice. I just feel so terrible that happened. Her face whitened. I continued to grin. She started to sputter and suddenly I became concerned, maintaining eye contact the whole time. Now that I mention it, the other vehicle was a blue buggy just like yours. Oh, I hope the cops don't get confused and think it was you. That would be terrible. I kept the look on my face and we stared at each other in silence until she drove away. Karen left her husband, now she really regrets it. I told her that she did this to herself. My daughter Gina, who's 38, left her husband, Dan, who's 40, for a younger and more exciting man from her work. They broke up when she got hit with a condo levy she asked him to help pay for since he was living with her. He declined since he wasn't on the deed. He said he didn't mind paying rent, but that maintenance was on the owner. They fought, and that was that. She ended up having to sell the condo. It was too expensive for her alone, but it was something she fought for in the divorce. That was 6 years ago, and she finally burned through the money from the sale. We told her to buy something smaller in a different neighborhood, but she insisted that she needed to live there so the kids wouldn't be disrupted. In the meantime, our son-in-law just remarried a lovely girl, Madison, who's about 28. Our grandkids love her, and she's always very pleasant when we speak. She's pregnant, and the kids are excited for a new sibling. My daughter is back living with us. All she does is work and complain. She has to work too much. She can't meet good men. This new woman stole her life. It never stops. My wife is always commiserating with her about how she is so hard done by. I just keep my mouth shut. Madison came by yesterday to pick up the kids. After she left, my daughter went off again. She was driving a new car they got since her old one would be impractical for a family of 5 to drive around in. The kids ran out to see it and check out all of the bells and whistles. Gina didn't even say hello. After Madison and the kids left, she started whining again. Now about how she can't afford a new car. I couldn't help it. I told her that she made her choices to give up her life she had for something different, and that choices have consequences. She literally ran crying to her room, and I felt like crap. Her mom scolded me for being so harsh. I apologized for saying what I said, and I honestly feel bad about it, but I think she needs to stop complaining about her life since she's the one that chose it. Not the jerk. Your daughter is 38 and is old enough to hear the truth. You don't need to use kids' gloves anymore with her. Well, what do you think? Was Dad too harsh with his daughter or not? Please let us know. Gee, maybe if you didn't run out on your family, you wouldn't be in this position. Laid off and replaced by 2 lazy privileged waffles. I used to be in charge of the printer room in a rather large company. We shipped a ton of product every day, and everything shipped had to have the accompanying printed labels and documents. Nothing can even be loaded onto the trucks without this paperwork. Now this was in the olden days of the 90s, so we had 7 massive 4-foot-tall dot matrix printers that did all of the work. These printers were temperamental jerks, and if the paper jammed, the printer did not automatically stop printing. It would just keep pushing and jamming more and more paper onto the machine until, if left untended, it would break down. Running the printer room was a 2-person job. When I started, I trained for 2 full weeks with the 2 current printer room employees. One was being promoted, I was replacing him. It was a rough 2 weeks, let me tell you. Getting the hang of the job, the various things you had to learn and do, etc. One thing that made it even more complicated was the fact that each printer had its own personality with its own problems. Another was the fact that a problem in one printer could have a different fix than the exact same problem in another. The job would be quiet for 45 minutes straight, during which we did routine maintenance and such, but was really slow and quiet and restful. Because this company processed its shipping orders in batches once an hour, and then, boy, on the hour, every hour, the batch of orders would go through and thousands of orders would come spitting out. Now, if you were on top of things and kept everything running smoothly, the orders would print out very neatly and quickly. But if you didn't know what you were doing, if you didn't maintain things just right, you'd get a backup and things would go horrible very, very fast. And when one machine went down, you had to fix it fast before the next one jammed, because guaranteed those machines would jam up multiple times on every batch print job. So I've been working the print room for several months and things were great. Then my coworker gave his 2 weeks notice. We tried to train my replacement, but he was incredibly lazy and got himself fired a few days after the end of his training, which left me in the printer room alone. Then the bosses informed me that my position is being phased out and I'm going to be replaced by 2 employees transferred from a different department. So not only am I losing my job, but I have to train my replacements. And I desperately needed a good recommendation from this company, so I couldn't just quit or do a crappy job. I quickly learned that both of these transfers are lazy and useless. They'd been with the company for decades, had friends in the head office, and knew their jobs were safe. I'd show them how to do something, and they'd flat out laugh and say, "Yeah, I'm not doing that." Every day, I'd be trying to train them, and they would just ignore me, chat with each other, leave to go sit in the cafeteria, leaving me to do a 2-person job alone. Luckily, I was good enough to handle the workload, but it was annoying. Mindful of the fact that I needed a reference of this company, I kept extensive notes on each day's progress. I clearly documented every single instance of the replacements refusing to help, even listened to my instructions. I also followed up daily with my direct supervisor, and he knew what was going on. And my notes went into the company files and were passed up the line. Despite my scathing reports, head office did nothing. Now it's my last day. This is the day the training process assigned for letting the newbies work alone, with no help or supervision allowed, to see how well they handle the job and the pressure. I was, in writing, forbidden to help them or answer any questions. As I expected, things fell apart pretty much immediately. Minutes into the first batch of orders, one of the biggest printers jammed and the clueless jerks had no idea how to fix the printer jam, because they ignored me every time I tried to show them how. So they turned to me and demand that I fix things. I'm sitting at a desk, coffee in one hand, an apple in the other. I just smile back and say, "Yeah, I'm not doing that." So one of them is yelling at me while the other is basically thumping uselessly on the printer like a gorilla that just found a candy machine. Then a second printer jams. Paper starts spilling out of the back of the first printer, which, if you knew the job, was a really, really bad warning sign. "Well, I'm going to the cafeteria. Good luck," I say as I stand up. As I'm leaving, I hear a third printer break down and jam up. I went to my supervisor and let him know what was happening. He said he not only expected as much, he had predicted so repeatedly to his superiors. He once again specifically forbade me from offering any help, so I went to the cafeteria and read my book for a little over an hour. Then my supervisor comes to me to let me know what happened. The entire printer room is down. Every single printer either jammed up or is actually broken. The company is losing thousands of dollars every single minute. One of the shipper and receiving supervisors finds me, all in a panic, begging me to get the orders printed. "Sorry, I'm not allowed to do that," I replied. Now several people are running around outside the cafeteria, all in a panic, running from place to place, trying to figure out why they don't have any shipping orders. The chaos took hours to resolve, and I wasn't allowed to fix the problems. Anytime someone started giving me a hard time, my supervisor would intervene and show the memo from the bosses stating that I was forbidden to help them in the printer room that day. I spent the entire last day at work drinking coffee, chatting with coworkers, and reading my book. The whole fiasco ended up costing the company tens of thousands of dollars. Am I the jerk for telling my family how much my fiancé earns after years of them making fun of his job? My family is very well educated and full of professionals, including several doctors, surgeons, dentists, etc. I have a good career and I make a good living. When I met my fiancé, he was at my house to supervise a roofing crew the insurance company hired to replace my damaged roof. I instantly fell for him when he pulled up in his truck and couldn't keep my eyes off him for the rest of the day as he gave orders to his men. When we started dating, he was vague about his job, and I just chalked it up to him being insecure about me having a better career. I didn't care about our income imbalance. When we got serious, we talked about our future plans, and that was when he told me the full extent of his little construction company. I was shocked that his construction earnings is as much as my dad's surgeon salary. Gradually, he took me around to the handful of construction lots and shopping centers he owns. His rental income, combined with his construction earnings, is double that of my dad's. He said that few people knew about this, his finances, and he expects me to keep what I know to myself. My parents disapproved of him since the first time I brought him home. My dad coined the term tool boy, and the rest of my family joined in whenever they talked about him behind his back. They don't call him that to his face, but instead just make snide remarks. Once my mom said during dinner that they're thinking about hiring someone to mow their lawn, then turned to my fiance and asked him what he charges. I always try to defend him, and it's a constant battle. It's gotten worse since we're planning our wedding, and the other day, my nerves just broke. Yesterday, my parents were trying to talk me into getting a prenuptial agreement. Then my dad said, "You have to protect your assets, just in case Tool Boy decides to go slumming." I lost it and yelled at my parents. During our shouting, I blurted out his earnings and that he makes more than both of them combined. Then I stormed out. I told my fiance what happened, but instead of supporting me, he got mad that I told my parents that. I argued that I was defending him, then we got into an argument too. My parents and family are mad at me for keeping secrets. My fiance is mad at me for not keeping secrets. I'm stuck in the middle, and I don't know what to do. Sounds like your husband likes to build relationships on foundations and merits outside of his finances. Meanwhile, your family looks down on anyone they deem lesser earners than themselves. I know whose corner I'd be in. Apologize to your husband and tell your family to buzz off. Sorry, but you're the jerk. There are plenty of other things you could have said to illustrate how horrible your family was being. You didn't have to throw out numbers. Now, if your family starts acting better, he'll always know that it's on the basis of his earnings and not his character. Edit. And husband will always know that your knee-jerk reaction was to be like, "But he does make money," rather than, "Who cares what he makes? He makes me happy. He takes care of me. We're good partners with the same life goals. We love each other. Support that or shut up." Edit 2. All right, I'll give OP some leeway, but I still think that there were better ways to go about it. We're perfectly compatible and happy with our mutual finances, which are none of your business. My boyfriend didn't want to pay $200 to save my life. I was at a bar with my boyfriend and his friends a while ago. We all had a great time, dancing on the tables, singing and drinking. I remember feeling totally fine one second, and the next I got very unsteady, and I lost connection with my body. I got confused and scared, but then just so calm. It was all types of weird. Most of what happened I can't even remember now. I became unconscious, and according to my boyfriend, the few times I opened my eyes, they looked very scared. He was told to get a taxi and to take me to the emergency room fast. He managed to get me into the taxi and it started to drive. My boyfriend told me that during the driver told him that he would have to pay $200 extra if I threw up. Then my boyfriend said, "Oh no," stopped the driver and wanted to walk to the emergency room. I was still unconscious and he didn't know why or if my life was at risk. Luckily for him, the police were driving around and they saw me laying on the ground. They asked him what's up and they drove us to the emergency room with blue lights on and fast. They took it very seriously, and without them, my boyfriend would have been lucky to even get me to the emergency room. Turns out, someone had put something in my drink that night. It got worse as he made me walk with shaky legs from the emergency room the day after. A walk that should have been 20 minutes took me 2 hours. Even started talking about the fact that maybe they put something in his drink too, even though he didn't feel weird at all that night. Then he started to talk about him paying the taxi $40 for the little drive and how much it was, like he wanted me to pay him back or something. He constantly stated that it was $40 and how sick that was. It's the normal price around here. He also ignored me once I said someone was following me. He was never scared of letting me walk around in town at night, but if a female friend did it, then he would have to follow and make sure she's safe. He argues, "Why am I scared?" instead of trying to make me feel better or protecting me. Other than that, he's a kind man, but this cannot be normal. Is this relationship worth it? I'm scared I'm overreacting, but keep in mind that most of this is told from his perspective, as I don't even remember that night. Edit. I forgot to say that I asked him what he would have done differently if this happened today, and paying for the taxi was not on the list. Edit 2. I just have to say that he did call for an ambulance, but they didn't show up. According to him, it was one of the first things he did. But he told them I was conscious, and so they didn't feel the need to come. An ambulance is basically free here, meaning it would have saved him money. He would have no reason not to call. Some people also said that I should have paid him back for the taxi, and I agree based on the information I gave you. But I was the one that paid for drinks that night, and I spent a lot more than $40 on him. In total, I spent $176 to be exact. Edit 3. In a way, I wanted you guys to tell me that I was overreacting and that he really tried his best. Seeing that you also find this situation a little messed up makes me feel less crazy though. And yeah, I'll dump him. I think it will be the best for both of us. Let's put it this way. I've done more to help out a passed out stranger than your own boyfriend did to help you. My marriage is falling apart because of my changed lifestyle. I'm a 37-year-old woman. I've been married to my husband, who's 40, for 10 years. We have 2 kids together who are 7 and 4. I never had any issues in my marriage before. After my son was born, I went into deep depression. My life was not in the right track. I was stuck in a dead-end, low-paying job. I was handling my boy alone because my husband was working overtime to feed us. When my daughter came along, I made a decision to change myself. I used to drink a lot. Now I'm sober. I haven't touched a drink in 5 years. I've changed my diet and bad food habits. I go to the gym and I do yoga every morning. My sleep has improved a lot. My mood has improved drastically with just some changes. I do not get irritated easily or become helpless. I have also updated my resume and looked for a job that suits me. I make a decent amount of money now. I get compliments from people around me telling me I look great. I've lost a ton of weight too. I thought my husband would be happy, but he's not. He dislikes that I get compliments from people or when people compliment me in front of him. I didn't see it as a big issue. He used to joke about how people assume he's Adam Sandler who got the hot chick. I used to brush it off as a joke. Then I discovered he was cheating on me with a coffee shop waitress. I don't think her job title matters, but that girl doesn't seem nice to me. I've looked through some of the chats of her and my husband, and she called me an old hag trying to fit in with the young. She lives with her parents and is a high school dropout. She's only 22 years old. I'm devastated. I thought my husband would be happy, but this affair has been going on for 7 months. Despite me working more hours now, I still do all of my wifely duties. I cook for him, make him his lunch for the office, I initiate love and intimacy. Now here I am getting a divorce from him. When I confronted him about the affair, he told me being with me is always overbearing. He feels invisible because most people give me attention, and somehow it's my fault. I was obsessed with myself rather than noticing how this is making him feel. He feels small because he's been stuck in the same place 5 years ago. I just don't get it. I never pushed him to follow my lead. I also told him that I loved him no matter what. Why is this happening? I don't want my kids to grow up in a broken family, but I cannot live with him after what he has said and done. I know he's being insecure, but he didn't have to hurt me like this. I know as a single mom it's tough to survive. People have warned me that my husband could act differently towards me. They were right. I wish it didn't end like this. Update. I'm doing fine. Yes, there's still pain, but things are moving smoothly. I did get my son and daughter to therapy. My son knows why we are divorcing. He gets angry sometimes and throws a fit. My daughter is too young to understand anything. I just want to know how I can handle this. How can I make my son see that none of this is his fault, but his father's? I do not want to keep anything a secret from my kids because I believe the relationship between a couple affects the kids too. I do want him to have a good relationship with his dad, but I do not want him to take a bad lesson from this. The other day I was watching the movie Family That Prays. I know this is silly, but I had this fear inside me that what if my son blames me for the divorce, like Andrea blamed her mother because her father left? What if he turns out just like his own father? I can't control everything that goes inside his head. I try my best to be there for my son, but the constant fear of losing him is still there. My father came to visit me. He lives in a different city. He only knew half the truth. After knowing the full truth, he was very angry. When my ex-husband came to visit our kids, my dad and him got into a huge fight. My dad used to be in the army, so my ex-husband is terrified of him. He threatened to call the police, but my dad shouted, "I'm not afraid of a cockroach like you." I told my dad not to make things more complicated than they already are. I'm trying my best to keep my daily routine. Sleeping has been tough, but I do not want to depend on pills. On the bright side, I have a lot of free time on my hands. I realize that half of my chores have been reduced. I know kids are messy, but there is a huge relief. I do not have to clean crumbs off the table or have rings of water droplets on the coffee table, which annoys me a lot. Things stay in their place. I started to notice my husband was the one who made half of the mess and I was the one who cleaned it. Last week, I went to the theater with my son and daughter to watch Barbie. We were accompanied by my friend, who's also a single mom of 2. I wore a costume and we had a lot of fun. I'm still trying my best to stay afloat, and I'm not thinking about dating. I do not have the urge to date at the moment. I did get hit on in a few places, but nothing exciting. I'll see you guys later. Fired from Walgreens I never worked at. So this was some 10 years ago, and while the conversation is paraphrased, I remember it like it was yesterday. Background. At the time, I was working grave and swing as a casino player's host in Reno. For those who don't know what this job is, we take care of the high rollers, make sure they get comps, dining and hotel reservations, get invites to tournaments, limo rides, you name it. I wore a nice black blazer with a name tag, slacks, comfortable but professional shoes, hair and makeup done. The days I worked swing, I was off at 3 a.m., but after waiting for bus and the ride home, I would make it to my place at about 5 a.m. Directly across the street from my home was a Walgreens. I stopped in a lot of mornings to grab a protein shake, pick up prescriptions, etc. But on Wednesday mornings, they put out a lot of clearance items. You could snag small appliances dirt cheap, so I was always there on Wednesdays, stocking up on Christmas and birthday presents, etc. The employees and manager knew me by sight, and some knew me by name. I was usually a zombie after work, I think like most people are. And this Wednesday was no different. I was looking over the latest selection, trying to decide if I needed a new coffee maker or just wanted one because it was clearanced for $5. A woman was next to me, speaking Tagalog into her phone. I don't speak it, but Reno has a pretty large Filipino community, so I could at least recognize it. Her language is not important to the story. It just struck me how odd the little things we remember are. She finished her conversation and looked at me. "Can I get a discount on this?" I don't remember what the item was, some small appliance. "The box is smashed up." "No idea," I told her, but I would ask to plug it in to test it before I bought it if the box is damaged. I have no idea if anyone can actually do that, but it seemed reasonable to me. "Why would you sell something that doesn't work?" she demanded. I had no idea at this point that she thought I worked there. I thought she was making conversation. In my defense, I was half asleep and just wanted a good deal on a darn stick blender. "Oh," I told her, "I absolutely wouldn't sell it, but I'm not in the business of selling things anyway." "Oh, so you are too good and important to sell things. That is just for the low employees?" I finally looked at her. Until then, I was pretty focused on staying awake. I could see she was getting angry. It dawned on me that I still had my name tag on. I slipped it off. They're the kinds with magnets, not pins, and stuck it in my pocket. "Oh, sorry, I forgot to take this off. I don't actually—" I started to say that I didn't work there, but she was having none of it. "Oh, you think you are too good to help me? Just because of who I am? My money is too good for you?" She said something in Tagalog that did not sound flattering. "You think you can trick me taking off your name tag?" I just sighed. "I don't want your money. I don't work here. I'm shopping. Please leave me alone." She ignored everything that I just said except for, "Oh, you won't be getting my money because you need to give me this for free for not helping me." "Ma'am," I tried to reason with her, "I can't give you that. I really don't work here. If you take it without paying, that's stealing." "Oh, now you think I'm poor and a thief?" What? Where did this come from? "I want to talk to the manager of the store." "Lady," I turned back to the shelf, "I wish you would talk to anyone but me." She stomped off, her heels making a tick-tick sound on the linoleum. I decided I did need another coffee maker and that stick blender. As I was putting both in my cart, I hear the tick of her shoes. Great, she's back. But she's not alone. Tom, the store manager, was with her. "There she is, the woman who called me a poor thief. I want you to fire her and make her the poor one." Weird obsession with poverty. Tom looked at me confused. "What's going on here?" I grinned and held up my coffee maker. "Just shopping." Tom was even more confused. But why are you insulting her?" "She thinks I work here and wants me to help her steal an appliance." Okay, I know it's a bit of an exaggeration, but she's the one who started it. This was the moment that her medication stopped working. In a very loud mix of English and Tagalog, she shrieked out our entire interaction. Surprisingly, she told it correctly too, except that I didn't put my name tag away to trick her. Tom was done at this point. He just looked at me and said, "You're fired." The woman grinned maliciously at me, grabbed her smashed up box and stormed off with Tom as I shrugged and made my way over to the allergy medications. At the register, Tom asked me what really happened. I told him everything, including how I told her I wished that she'd talk to anyone but me. Tom laughed and told me that I was still fired. Yay, I grinned. Do I get a severance package? Tom laughed harder. To be fair, you did lose it on her. Plus, you don't actually work here, so no, No severance package. That's it. I shopped there for many years before I moved. I never saw her again, so I'm sure she went on content with getting me fired and making me poor. Am I the jerk for getting angry because my boyfriend ate my food? I'm a stay-at-home mom. I do all of the cooking, cleaning, and anything kid-related. We're a family of 5. I make sure dinner is served before my boyfriend comes home at 5 because I know that he's always starving from working hard and providing for our family. So when it comes to dinner, I'm always the last to eat. After serving everyone and making sure everyone has their juice and whatever else they need, as a result, I'm usually the last to sit and enjoy my meal. Well, this day was no different. I made Chinese food, fried rice, orange chicken, walnut prawns, and my all-time favorite, egg rolls. I served everyone. I took meds to settle my stomach and sat down to wait for them to work. I made my boyfriend's plate stacked with rice and plenty of egg rolls. When he got his plate, he immediately asked if there was enough for seconds. I explained to him that I hadn't eaten yet and that there may be some leftovers after I served myself up a plate. There wasn't much left. There was a spoonful of rice left and extra egg rolls. I made extra because they're my favorite. I sat down on the couch and conversed with my boyfriend about his day. I watched as he polished off his food. He got up to take his plate to the kitchen, came back chewing. I didn't think anything of it. He tends to eat the scraps off our kids' plates, so I thought nothing of it. He got up a few more times, still munching, and came back with a beverage. Again, I haven't eaten because I'm waiting for my meds to kick in. 20 minutes passed at this point, and my stomach is ready for the food I just spent hours making. I go in the kitchen, and all of my egg rolls are gone. I was immediately upset. I told him I hadn't eaten yet, told him not to touch the food until after I ate. When I confronted him, he said, "Eat one off the kid's plate." I cooked and served everyone, and this is how I'm treated? He then offered to make me more, and I declined as these are not store-bought, ready-made egg rolls. These are from scratch, rolled up, and then fried egg rolls. So no, he couldn't make me more. To make a long story short, I didn't eat. I was upset and I went to bed hungry. No apology or anything. Am I the jerk for still being angry 2 days later? I've also boycotted cooking and anything related to my stay-at-home mom duties. Not the jerk. He knew exactly what he was doing, and he prioritized his greed over your need. Not okay under any circumstances. That was disgusting. He showed you who he truly values, and it's not you. Am I the jerk for telling my daughter that she is smart and hardworking, but not gifted? My wife and I both have electrical engineering degrees, but I no longer work in the field, and I'm a manager now. We have a daughter who's 15 and a son who's 17, and both will be headed to university next month. My son is doing a BA and has not yet picked his major, and my daughter will be studying physics and computer science. My son is also very smart and is a history and language nerd. My daughter is smart and hardworking and is attending at an earlier age than usual. She was in a school program for gifted kids. We were having a conversation at dinner the other day, and my wife mentioned how proud she was of our daughter and how lucky we were to have gifted kids going to a good university program and how not many people can do what our daughter did. I was also very happy, but I said that while daughter is very hardworking and smart, I would not say that she is actually gifted, and others can do it if they put in the same amount of work. Her school does a lot to try to admit girls into her program, and my wife helped teach her advanced college-level math and physics from an earlier age. She didn't naturally pick it up on her own. If anything, being a younger applicant with the same credentials probably helped her stand out more for the admissions committee. I have seen how people can ruin their lives over thinking they are gifted and it go into their heads, so I just wanted to caution her about that. Both my wife and daughter are upset at me now. My wife thinks I was trying to put her down, which is not true, and says that she is gifted, while my daughter actually agrees with me, but says I should not have said it as she already knows it. Am I the jerk here? It might not come across in the post, but I am genuinely proud and happy for my kids, and beyond what I described here, there was a lot of complimenting and celebration on my part. You're the jerk. Putting your daughter down served no positive purpose. Discouraging a young teen like that can have serious detrimental effects. Even if she isn't actually gifted, you were the jerk. That being said, she is gifted. Not every 15-year-old can go to a university to study physics. Not only is she gifted academically, she's gifted with drive and determination. Not everyone has that, and you tried to put her down. Well, what do you think? Is Dad a jerk for saying his daughter's not gifted or not? Please let us know. She sounds pretty gifted to me. What's wrong with you, Daddy-o? No calls and I can't leave the floor? Okay. This story harkens back to ye olden days when Blockbuster and Hollywood Video were the things to do on a family-friendly Friday, and cell phones were still something most people didn't really consider necessary, aka the 90s. I took a job at a video store near my house. It was a small, family-owned store with 3 different branches in town. The job was wonderful. I loved movies and games. It was close to my residence and school. I even got free video rentals and a discount from the sub shop next door. The video store was located in a beautiful old building from the 1920s. It had marble stairs and a really amazing cage elevator that led up to the storage and employee lounge. The job was perfect for me. The hours were flexible, the pay was decent, but the only one drawback was that my supervisor, let's call her Amanda because that was her name. Seriously, forget Amanda. Amanda was on the older side and seemed to not be content with how her life had turned out. As a result, she took all of her frustrations out on anyone she could, especially those people who she worked with who happened to be younger. If you were a college student like myself, you earned a special extra helping of disdain from her. I mean, really, how dare you decide to actually have aspirations of making more than $7.50 an hour? While I'm generally fairly tolerant of people like Amanda, she really went the extra mile to annoy me as much as humanly possible. She was bitter, mean, petty, and did anything and everything she could to just be plain unpleasant. She wasn't even nice to customers. The only upside to this attitude was that she didn't let Karen customers get away with their Karenness. I might have been able to take more if she happened to be particularly knowledgeable or good at her job. She was neither and only appeared to have the job because of good old nepotism. She was the daughter-in-law of the owner. She knew nothing about movies or games or gaming systems or anything we rented or sold. When a customer had a question, she would pawn them off on another employee. When she had a problem with the computers, who did she call to fix it? Me. When there was a delivery that needed to be checked into the system, who did she call? Me. When stock needed to be dragged up to the stockroom, that's me again. Any unpleasant task that came up, she would always try to give it to me. Generally, she hid in the back watching TV or talking on the phone, which did tie up the store's landline for literally hours, or doing anything and everything she could to avoid doing her actual job. When I brought up Amanda to Ken, the owner, he simply sighed and gave me a pained look and asked me to just try to bear with it and to stay out of her way if I could. I got the distinct impression that Ken didn't much care for her either, but she was his daughter-in-law. He did try his best to try to make sure I wasn't scheduled to work with her, but at least once a week I had to work with this paragon of kindness and light. One day I was on the phone with a customer discussing the late fees on their account when Amanda wanted to make a call. This resulted in Amanda ripping me a new one in front of an entire store of people. It was on a Saturday and we were packed to the rafters. She was yelling so loudly that the woman on the phone asked me if we were being robbed and whether she should call the police. Before I could answer, Amanda yanked the phone out of my hand and slammed it into the cradle. "You are never, ever to be on that phone. You understand me?" While I was desperately aching to headbutt her, I bit my tongue, took a deep breath, counted to 10. When that didn't work, I counted to 20, then 50. Instead of telling her that I hoped rabid wolverines would get her, I simply smiled and said, "All right." This seemed to annoy her even more than if I'd gotten angry. She stormed back to the office and I took a stream of customers, all of whom asked me if I was okay and one offered suggestions on how to get rid of her. I appreciated the suggestions, but I had plenty of my own ideas. I checked it off in my big book of voodoo curses and hoped I would have a chance to pay Amanda back for her thoughtful gesture of embarrassing me in front of half of the metropolitan area. Still, there were a few more pieces to be laid out for my malicious compliance, and Amanda wouldn't disappoint me. The next piece came, perhaps a month later. I had been at work for about 7 hours of my 9-hour shift and had only seen Amanda once, and that had been when she left the store. Considering I only had 2 hours left of my shift and hadn't yet taken a break, I really needed to go to the bathroom. I told my coworker I was heading to the restroom. This was, however, apparently not in keeping with Amanda's view for the universe. She actually began to bang and kick the bathroom door, demanding I come out. I took my time, washed my hands, adjusted my hair, and calmly walked out of the bathroom. While she began to scream, I ignored her and walked up to the front of the store and took the cart of movies to be reshelved. She grabbed the front of the cart and swiped the movies off the top. She then informed me of my questionable parentage and started calling me names. Amanda told me that under no uncertain terms was I to ever leave the floor while I was on the clock. Again, I summoned an inner calm that would have made Gandhi proud. I forced a smile and nodded. "All right." While I seemed calm on the outside, I had made up my mind that I would have my chance. No matter how small, I would have my moment. That shining moment came on a lazy and blissfully quiet morning. As it was a morning, it would just be me and Amanda. Hopefully she would stay in the office and I wouldn't have to deal with her at all. When I came in, there were workmen in the back working on the elevator. One of the guys came up and told me that he needed a part and he would be back tomorrow to finish up the work. Annoying, as I would now have to take armfuls of heavy tapes up the stairs, but it wasn't the end of the world. The light of my life arrived a few hours later without a word to anyone. I stood at the front putting "Be kind, rewind" stickers on a batch of new arrivals when I noticed Amanda through the back door getting into the elevator. After the man told me that he needed a part, it didn't even occur to me that the elevator had the power on, and I had a moment of amusement at thinking that Amanda was going to have to take the hated stairs. She was, above all, lazy. However, it seemed the elevator did indeed have power and it worked. At least it worked just enough to go up half of a floor and then stop. It was just close enough to the upper floor that climbing out onto that floor was impossible, and just far enough from the lower floor that climbing out was impossible. I couldn't believe my eyes. Malicious compliance activated. I couldn't entirely see Amanda as she tried to open the door and get out, but I could hear her. The sounds of frustration increased until I heard the most beautiful sound I ever heard. Amanda. OP! A slow smile, reminiscent of the Grinch, curved my lips. I walked to the very edge of the sales floor and called out. Yes? Amanda. The elevator is stuck. Can you open the door from your side? Me. I don't know. I can't see it from here. She huffed in annoyance. Well, get over here and try to open it. I can't do that, Amanda. Why not? Me. I'm not allowed to leave the floor while I'm on the clock under any circumstances. Are you kidding me? You said it yourself. Since I value my job, I can't possibly go against orders. Call maintenance. The number should be in the office. Trying to sound as innocent and sympathetic as I could possibly manage, while also trying not to burst out laughing, I can't do that either. I'd have to leave the floor to go to the office. You think you're real funny, don't you? I don't know what you mean. Call Ken then. I know you know his number. Well, I would, but I'm not allowed to use the phone, remember? Amazingly, she stopped. There was not even one word telling me that my parents were never married. It was silent. I think for the first time she realized that she might actually be in a little trouble. She was stuck in a position entirely of her own making, with no way out of it for the foreseeable future. Amanda. OP, please, just get me out of here. I'm sorry, Amanda. I'm just following orders. All pretense and niceness was dropped as she proceeded to inform me of all of my imagined faults and those of my parents, friends, and any other relations I might have or think to have in the future. Then she sealed her fate. She yelled at me that I was fired. In truth, I really only planned on letting her stew for a few minutes, but after that, nah. Me. I'm fired? Okay, then I guess I'll head home. Oh, I should also let you know that Bill called and said he'd be in at 7 instead of 5. He has to pick up his brother from the airport. So, I guess you'll be there for a while. I hope you've got a good book or something. Amanda. What? You jerk. You think you can do this to me? When I get out of here, I'm going to get you. Me. Wow, okay, yeah, have fun with that. Have a good one. I'll leave my name tag and shirt on the front desk. Wait! Bye. Wait! Me. Don't worry, I'll lock up on my way out and I'll put up a sign so people will know we're closed. OP, wait, I didn't mean it. Come back. I walked up front, wrote out a sign that we're closed until 7 p.m. due to unforeseen circumstances. The very last thing I heard from Amanda before I opened the doors was, "But I have to go to the bathroom." Still snickering to myself, I locked the door and drove the 45 minutes out to Ken's house to let him know the shop was closed. Could I have gone the 5 minutes to my house and called? Sure I could. Did I? Nope. Ken seemed a bit surprised to see me there. Ken, I thought you were working today. Me. Oh, I was, but Amanda fired me. Ken, she's not allowed to do that. All hiring and firing goes through me. She knows that. Don't worry, I'll call her. I think maybe it's time to talk to my son about her. I can't keep her on with her acting like this. Me. I don't think she'll be able to answer the phone. Ken gave me a long, sharp look as I tried very hard not to smile. Then I gave up entirely and just smiled broadly back at him. Ken: OP? Me: yes. What did you do? Me: I didn't do anything. I only followed her orders. Ken leaned down to me eye to eye. What happened? I gave him the full tale, from her telling me that I couldn't use the phone under any circumstances to her telling me that I wasn't allowed to leave the sales floor when I was on the clock. Then I told him about her being stuck in the elevator. You didn't tell her the elevator was broken? I didn't even realize it had power. Ken just stood there looking at me gobsmacked and then started laughing. I should really go let her out. He paused for a minute and looked down at his dirty hands and clothes, then up at me. But I really shouldn't leave these flowers half planted, and then I should probably take a shower. I don't want to make that drive covered in dirt. Me: oh, of course not. You've got a really nice car, and it would be a lot of work to get that mulch dirt out of your seats and carpet. Do you need some help with the planting? Ken nodded back at me and gave another chuckle. It took probably another hour to finish planting the flowers. Ken told me I'd be paid for the day and sent me home with assurances that I did indeed still have a job and that he would deal with Amanda. I fully enjoyed the rest of my half-day off. I did hear from Bill that when he got there, the elevator repair guy had just arrived and that Amanda ended up spending about 5 hours stuck in the elevator. After that day, I only saw her one more time. She glared daggers at me as I waved happily to her as she carried a bag of her things out to her car. Whenever I think about it, I still get a little smile on my face. Besides, I only did what she told me to. To my husband's female colleague, a saga of obsession. I don't know your Reddit name, but you finally gave me a reason to use my throwaway. I know you looked through this sub after you got advice here telling you to come clean to me about your affair with my husband. I personally couldn't find a thread that fit the description, but could be the wrong sub or that you deleted it. So if you read this and it sounds familiar, then yes, it's about you. I have no plans of speaking to you in the future, but I want to make a few things clear. Yes, I do remember when we first met at the Christmas party and you kept trying to get my husband alone to talk. You pouted so much when he refused, I thought you would quack. Do you remember how all of his colleagues were friendly with me? I remember when you approached my husband and I walking home from my birthday dinner. I'm pretty sure this was a coincidence, but seeing my husband practically jump away from you trying to hug him was the highlight of my night. I know my husband is attractive, of course I know. I married him and had kids with him. But I bet you didn't know because you have only been at the company for a few months and your coworkers used to be my coworkers. I know all about you trying to get him alone after meetings. Not only straight from my husband because you make him feel uncomfortable, but also from them. Did you think he wouldn't talk to me after you accidentally sent him 2 of those photos on separate occasions? Did you think you could really get him? Did you look at his Instagram and think, wow, I want that life. I just need to lie to his wife and it's all mine? Did you think knocking on my door when I'm hosting a dinner party to hand me printouts of your conversations with him that I would go off on the deep end and divorce him? I'm pretty sure HR have spoken to you already about your inappropriate behavior and misuse of his personal file. I'm sure that you're shocked. Maybe you didn't think my husband would report it. I don't know what repercussions you will get, and I don't care. If you come near me, my husband, or our kids, or our nice home again, the police will be called. A word of advice. If you're going to fabricate messages, you might want to get rid of the wrong number, or at least replace it with a name. Update. She has now been fired with immediate effect. I will update when we know our next steps. Update. A few people implied that there was no smoke without fire. Usually I would agree and have been on the other side making these comments myself on my actual account, but my husband is also on Reddit and saw the comments and he wanted me to add some prior events. My husband is high up within the company marketing department that works closely with the event team in their field. When they work together on a project, big or small, they have to have meetings. The bigger the project, the more meetings needed. My husband worked very closely with the colleague that went on maternity leave. The woman was highly recommended by a senior employee in the events team. So after she had training on the systems and brought up to speed by her department head and my husband for a big project, he was friendly towards her. He remained professional at all times, and the meetings they had were also never alone. The project was a success, and then another big project landed in their laps. It was at this time the woman started acting strange just before the Christmas period, asking for clarification after meetings when the points had been discussed thoroughly. When my husband rebuffed this and directed her to her own manager, it escalated to offering to discuss work matters over coffee, lunch, or dinner countless times a week, telling him that he looked good that day. This was done using her work email. She met me at the Christmas party and sulked when she couldn't get him alone, and a few days later sent my husband the first picture via social media. He didn't actually see the first picture until after she apologized in person. He accepted her apology before checking his messages when he was back at home with me. She had put a "oops, sorry, wrong person" message straight after it, so when he clicked that message, the first picture was there, which she could have deleted before he actually saw the message. A week later, a similar thing happens with a second picture on a different social media platform. He saw who the message was from and asked me to open it. It was a little worse than the one before, but when she apologized, she asked him if he told me about the pictures, as she didn't want me to get the wrong idea, as they were both obviously a drunken mistake. She was not a friend on any of his social media, so I don't know how she thought that was an excuse. My birthday comes along, and when she went to hug my husband, he jumped away as her actions were getting him worried. But after that, her actions calmed down a bit. She sort of stopped asking him out to discuss work so much. But then last Monday happened. Update. She was fired for harassment and misconduct, and this has led to someone else being suspended pending investigation. As my husband and I were both working from home, due to the events that happened last week, I was unaware at the time of my post that she had been suspended pretty much straight after my husband reported this to HR on Wednesday. He handed over the text exchange, the messages on his social media, with proof he never responded, and he printed out the work emails he had received also. The reason for the rapid response was due to the nature of the allegations, but I can confirm she was fired yesterday. I've not been told what she said, but she did not try to raise any allegations against my husband. In my comments, I explained a little about the HR system. The company uses an electronic personnel database which only HR employees can log into. No other employee should have access to this system, yet an employee in the IT department gave the woman unauthorized access to the HR system. A report was ran, and she had been in my husband's file 34 times. I don't know what she actually did in there, but apparently there were so many amendments that they had to restore his file from a recent backup. So the IT employee has been suspended pending an investigation, but I don't know much else about it as it's not my job to know. I'm only recounting what I've been told by my husband and former colleagues. The past 48 hours have been crazy, but I'm glad that this post reached other platforms as a relative of hers found the post and reached out to us to apologize for her actions. After a few messages were exchanged, we had a very long phone call. I will not go into specifics due to their privacy. However, I can say the following things with permission. The woman has been fixated on other men before, resulting in her having an order of protection against her and her needing treatment. The family believes this is due to an event that she witnessed when she was younger. She's normally very stable when she has medication. The only problem with that is, when she is stable, she believes she's completely healthy and stops taking the medication, causing a relapse. The person that she had told about this was her niece, who was not aware of her aunt's condition. The niece was under the impression it was a joke, then became scared when we called Wednesday morning, so she hung up. She reported this to her family, and they found out later that day the woman had been suspended. The family found the post and my comments referencing the text exchange and got my husband's name from the woman after confirming the post was her. The woman is currently staying with her other relatives about 4 hours away from where we are. We will be contacted if she goes missing from their care, especially while the medication is working its way back into her system. We will not be pressing charges at present, but we have logged this with the police, especially after talking about it with our friend, and her family are aware of this. Our security is being updated within the next 2 weeks. The school and daycare are also aware of the people who can and can't drop off and pick up our kids. They have also been provided a photo of her and to contact my husband or I if they see her near this school or if she attempts to pick them up. Hopefully I won't need to provide a further update to this, and I'm going to have a bottle of wine, and hopefully my husband and I will have a very good night's sleep. Update. We're still in contact with her relative. She's doing better than she was, but the medication still needs time to work its way into her system. It took a little while, and her whole family to convince her why her actions were inappropriate and she needed to take her medication. The family is still worried we will go the legal route, but we won't at this time. The niece has reached out to apologize for her. IT person has been let go. However, I do have a bit more information regarding that. She had asked for access to check her own file to check her reference. The IT person did it and forgot to take back the access. They had also given access to a few other employees. Access has now been revoked from everyone with unauthorized access. I don't know what the company will do with him yet, but I believe they're talking this out with their legal team. The senior employee that referred the woman in the first place has also reached out to apologize. They had no idea there was even an issue until HR spoke to them. We won't be pressing charges against her or the company, as we wish to just move on from this as well as we can. We would have if my husband's professional reputation had been tarnished by this, or if we seemed to be in danger. But we're glad that nothing more has happened other than a few gray hairs on both of us. Update. I was hoping my last one would be the end of everything, but things got crazier than we would have expected. I've tried to write this time and time again, but each time I did, something crazier happened. So my husband and I agreed with her older brother, Wayne, fake name, he's the father of the niece, that ex-colleague, Sarah, fake name, went to stay with her aunt and uncle 4 hours away. So everything was going well until late March. My phone was in the house and I was doing some gardening in front while the weather was warm, and I look up and Sarah was in front of me. She was smiling and oh so glad that she caught me when I was home, because she kept showing up when none of our cars were in the driveway. Before I even managed to process her presence, she yells with excitement that she's pregnant and my husband is the father. I swear my eyebrows contorted in confusion so much I couldn't see for a moment. It was evident she had not been on her medication, not because she was a mess. She was dressed very well and looked well cared for, but she was still under the impression that my husband had this forbidden romance with her. She goes on to tell me that their baby is due in mid-June, and that as I have been a dutiful wife and stuck by my husband through his infidelity, then we have to get along if I am to be in their child's life, and she hopes that I don't hold a grudge about this. Which is all well and good if there was a chance what she said was accurate, but I will state again that there's no way he could be the father. He doesn't have the time for an affair. With 4 kids, work, our joint social life, and his hobbies that are in our house, and our joint hobbies, unless he's actively cheating on his commute to and from work, there's no chance. Also with her due date, she would have gotten pregnant before she even met my husband. I mean, he had a little something to do with the interview process by glancing over her resume, but they didn't actually meet until she started working. As soon as she left, I found my phone had numerous missed calls from Wayne and messages and voicemails begging to call him back, so I called back to get more information before I called my husband. Wayne confirms that his aunt slipped up when she was giving him an update on Sarah's condition, which led to her spilling everything that had happened. I was not witness to this conversation, so I do not know the full details, but I know there was an argument and it resulted in finding out the following. As soon as she got to their aunt and uncle's house, she admitted she was pregnant. They jointly decided that she wouldn't take the antipsychotics until she gave birth to her baby. She promised to stay away until after the baby was born, but was adamant my husband was the father, and then decided the day before she needed to let us know. She's a curvy lady, so I may not have seen a 4 to 5 month baby bump when she turned up at my house, but I was a bit preoccupied when she turned up. There goes my bragging about my observation skill set. According to Wayne, their aunt and uncle were of the impression that my husband was the father of the baby as the result of a one-night hookup, and that he was denying his cheating to me, and that she became obsessive after this event. But apparently, she could do no wrong in their eyes, so accepted all of this and took her at her word without confirming this with Wayne, so all of the updates we had from them were just lip service. Wayne was just as upset as we were. He knew his sister was spiraling in this delusion, and his family that were meant to support her were letting this happen. So I relayed all of this to my husband, who was understandably upset and concerned for our safety. We log this with the police and decide that we can go forward with a restraining order after paternity is proven, as at that moment, it's just he said, she said, because my husband could not prove that he had never done this. The next time Sarah showed up in early April, we see her approaching. We send our kids upstairs and casually walk outside to talk to her. I did not want to talk to her where there weren't any cameras. I don't want her near our kids, and I didn't want her knowing the layout of our home. She asks to go inside and rubs her rounding stomach. I firmly tell her no. My husband tells her he wants a paternity test, which she seems offended by because she never cheated on him. But to prove that the baby is his, she agrees to have one after the baby is born. As infuriating as this situation is, it's understandable as it's her body. I admit, if this was the first time I had met her witnessing this conversation, I would be seriously questioning my husband. She seemed so genuine, coherent, and confident even. That was the scary part, that she fully believed that my husband was her baby's father. I've seen mental illness before and have never witnessed anything like this. She just seemed so sincere. Until she asked for money to support his unborn baby and get things, as even though she was staying with family out of town, and as she no longer had a job with their affair getting out, she wanted to be on her own by the time the baby was born. We refused and told her if paternity was proven, then we would help. Late April, we get a call from my husband's parents, who despite knowing the whole situation, asked my husband if there was a chance the baby could be his, and after reaffirming the no, they explained that they were at home and got a knock on the door and it was Sarah. She wanted to introduce herself because once the baby was born, she wanted them involved in the baby's life. They already knew who she was and what had happened between us, so we gave them strict orders to not upset her because we do not know what she's capable of, just that she's pregnant and unmedicated. My husband was disappointed and worried, but understood they had to ask at least once. His no was enough for them. We do not know how she located their address. We think she may have followed us at one point, or maybe it was on his personal file she saw as his previous address. We checked with our kids that nobody they didn't know had approached them, and they said no. Even checked to make sure if they had been told to keep secrets. Confirmed no. Even our youngest. But they are never alone anyway. A week after this, she came to our house when we had people over for a barbecue. Our kids were at my in-laws, and we had an opportunity to try to relax with our friends. We spoke briefly about what happened recently, and then she was walking through my kitchen into the garden like she owned the place. She was cradling her round her stomach and started introducing herself. This was the first time our friends had a look at her, but she was not allowed to stay for long. My husband ushered her out quickly, followed by me. Everything about trying to keep her calm to not trigger a mental health breakdown evaporated then. There were words exchanged that she cannot come to our house. It was not possible for him to be the father of her unborn baby, as they had never even been together. They never had a relationship. He didn't owe her any money. My husband let loose on her all of his frustrations. We saw Sarah's face sort of break. No violence on our part, but for a second she looked confused and shocked, and then she left quite quickly. We got Wayne on the phone after Sarah left to tell him what happened. He was going to search for her and found her later on that night. I started the process of putting our home up for sale. I needed a place that was a fortress, and despite loving our home, knowing she just seemed to be turning up when she wanted, I didn't feel safe and secure there anymore. My husband and I discussed bringing the restraining order for it, but we didn't want to trigger any mental health breakdown. I got word that after the barbecue, a few of our friends were not 100% confident in my husband and started asking more questions, trying to poke holes in his story. I can understand why, and so does my husband. She's so adamant that he is the baby's father that something must have happened at least once, and that I was deluded for believing my husband. I don't blame them for gossiping. If it was happening to someone I was acquainted with, I would probably think the same thing. But we were lucky that it wasn't any of our close friends or family that were gossiping. She turned up when we were visiting my relatives. The camera caught her looking inside the house through the windows. She didn't seem too coherent at that time. She stood outside the house for a long time, and she was talking gibberish to herself and seemed paranoid. Seeing this made me accept an offer on our home and pick out a lovely new home in a gated community. We're in the process of moving now. Wayne reached out and advised that Sarah had the baby, who looked a lot like her ex, asked if my husband still wanted to do the DNA test because it obviously wasn't his, which he agreed to because he wanted to put this behind us and to remove any possible doubt from me. I told him that I never doubted him because I didn't. I was scared of the situation, and behind closed doors, we had a lot of heated discussions because we were so stressed out, but never because I thought he could be the innocent baby's father. We also agreed so she could not ask for child support at a later time. The aunt and uncle have been corrected on their misunderstanding of the situation and also berated for the enabling behavior of Sarah. Some tough but necessary conversations were had with them, according to Wayne. Once they understood what had happened, they were mortified and wanted Wayne to pass on their apologies. He has taken paid time off and will be staying with them for a while. After Sarah had the baby, her brother, aunt, and uncle gave her the ultimatum that she takes her medication in front of them every day and to not try to contact us, or they put her into a mental health facility while her brother looks after the newborn until she's well enough to be released. She agreed to take her medication. DNA came back, and surprise, my husband is not the father. The look of relief and happiness on his face was priceless. Don't stop now. We've got hours of the best stories waiting for you. Tap here and keep watching. And hey, if you love these, don't forget to subscribe.